order shortly. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'll be calling the meeting for our open session for our board meeting on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, to order at 6:01 p.m. We are returning from closed session, and the report from closed session is as follows. The board took action by a vote of 5-0 to approve final settlement and release agreement by and between the Fullerton School District and the parents of student 800150 in the amount not to exceed $800. Next, the board took action by a vote of 5-0 to approve final settlement and release agreement by and between the Fullerton School District and the parents of student 113532. The district agrees to pay as a compromise and settlement only the sum of $5,500. And finally, the board took action by a vote of 5-0 to approve final settlement and release agreement by and between the Fullerton School District and the parents of student 3009208. The district agrees to reimburse for tutoring services not to exceed $1,710. Thank you. Finally, the board took action by a vote of 5-0 to approve final settlement and release agreement by and between the Fullerton School District. Damien, Mr. Ibarra, would you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready? I pledge allegiance
Thank
to
you
the
very
flag
much.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Dr. Hammett, would you like to go ahead and begin with the superintendent's report this evening? We're having some technical difficulties. We'll just wait one moment. We know at least one person is listening to our meeting tonight. Good evening, Dr. Pletka.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Chad Hammett, and I am filling in this evening for Dr. Pletka, who unfortunately is under the weather. He wishes he could be here, but he wanted to make sure to take care of his health and not spread anything to the rest of us. So we all appreciate that. On behalf of Dr. Pletka, I would really like to thank all of our staff, our teachers, our school staff, our M&O staff, our nutrition services staff. Every single employee in the Fullerton School District did such a great job getting our schools opened and ready. And every one of our schools still looks great. Our students are happy. They're in class. Great lessons are going on. And it's really due to the team effort that everyone put together. We also are just happy to be able to get into what feels more like a more regular school year this year. Everything seems to be running along smoothly, and we look forward to many great events coming up and having our community and our staff join us in addition to our students at these great events. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Berryman, would you like to give your report?
Sure, thank you. Okay. It seems like it's been forever since we've been here, but it hasn't been, right? We went for 2 weeks without being here. It's like, okay. I wanted to, we're going to hear tonight about some of our survey results on our facilities plan, our master plan. And as I was looking through there, I was noticing that a lot of our students especially made comments about, their lunches and wanting better lunches and things like that. And I had the privilege of going over to Nutrition Services over the past couple of weeks and looking at our kitchen and understanding that in order to get better, maybe upgrade our food services, it'd be kind of cool if we can really upgrade our kitchen to go along with that. So in reading that survey, kind of looking at what I saw, it looked like it kind of went hand in hand. So I just wanted to share that with anyone. If you guys have been to Nutrition Services, they do a great job. It's just how exciting for our staff there to feel so proud of what they do on a daily basis and how many meals they prepare for our students, from breakfast to lunch to supper, and snack and everything in between. So I kudos to them for doing that. I was able to attend the Fissler ceremony yesterday for 9/11 and appreciate the fact that they're still doing that and that our students are still acknowledging 9/11 and how moving that was. Team Kids is always there to talk about what they do, and they have a phenomenal program as well. Last thing I wanted to share is I'm going to miss the presentation or the kind of grand opening of the tiny house that's going to come up, I believe next week or what have you. So I went over to the classroom and just was floored about watching our students really engage in building and using, their hands and taking a floor plan and a model and a pattern and really building something, because they're making a small model of everything, and just watching our students really engaging in that and bringing woodworking. How we say the kids aren't getting any vocational skills anymore, and just watching them and watching all the students in the class, and it was a co-ed class, and so it's a little bit of it's 7th and 8th grade, and it's just a mixture. So it was very fun. It was fun to watch them and fun to talk to them. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Trustee Talavera.
Super excited that we're a few weeks in, actually close to a month into the school year. Seeing tons of amazing things happening at different school sites via social media. Unfortunately, haven't been able to visit many school sites since I've been tasked with some civic duties during these last 4 weeks on jury duty. So letting everyone know that I've been on jury duty. It's as you can tell, yes, as you can tell. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to. So via social media, thank God for social media and digital platforms, which I'll share. During my breaks and my lunch, I gotta still stay connected to the things I love. Our schools being one of them. Seeing Hermosa Drive start celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which will kick off on Friday, September 15th. Truly amazing again. So glad to see some of our schools that are going to be participating and seeing what other ones do some unique things out there to bring culture to their school and some diversity to show kind of what those elements look like firsthand. I also am pleased to see our facility master plan, but I also want to kind of make some connections to the digital and cyber safety of our students, and seeing potentially how we can integrate some of that to that plan as well too, knowing that there might be some infrastructure components that we might need to upgrade in that. So, but yeah, excited for today's meeting, and again, being back with you all here today.
Thank you very much. Trustee Hanchett?
Okay. Yeah, it does feel like we were just here. I was thinking about, we're a month in, and I do believe FSD is off to a really great start this year. But, maybe the adrenaline's running out a little bit, and we're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed with all the things. And I know as a parent, there's new schedules and new activities to balance. And I know as teachers, there's a lot of initiatives coming down. And it can be hard to get into those new rhythms of school. But I was thinking about this week just how the education world feels a little bit scary right now. If we look at the bigger picture, and it kind of can feel like a stormy ocean to some of us. And I had a bad day yesterday, but one of the highlights was picking up my daughter. And she gave me a big hug. She saw on my face that it had been a rough day, and just that anchor of being centered on a child really was really important to me. And I've been thinking about how, despite all the things that are happening and maybe what feels like storms sometimes and hard things that we're hit with, I believe that we're still centered on children. And I believe that this board and this district and our teachers and staff will always put them at the center and do what's best for all our children. And that gives me a lot of hope, even on hard days, even when the news doesn't look so great. And I believe that we will stay anchored and pursue our goal of doing what's best for them. So that's what I've been thinking about the last couple days.
Thank you. Trustee Sugarman?
Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you all here. It's special. I want to start by thanking Dr. Pletka for fishing so that we could have our traditional beginning of the year barbecue cooked by an unbelievable cabinet and unbelievable support from some of our vendors. And we really appreciate it, and I think that our folks really appreciate it. So kudos to all of you. Of course, we want Dr. Pletka healthy very soon. We're told he doesn't have COVID, so rest assured that's okay. But COVID is on the march, a different type of COVID, a less spooky COVID, but still, you don't feel good when you have a cough and aches and sneezes. So to our staff and to all of our families, we want everybody in school, but if you start having the sneezes, the hacking cough, the achy body, and some fever, please stay home. Make yourself well, because you can't learn when you're feeling that way. So I wanted to mention that. But I also want to mention, we talk about our school district being a family, okay? I want to thank Mike McAdam and the warehouse team. I needed some supplies delivered to my home for PTA and for principals. They came through with a smile and a wonderful attitude. And then the temperature was 94 degrees. And Scott and M&O said, I'm sending some guys out to help you with the tables and chairs. And I'm like, oh, I don't think I need it. But when the temperature at 8 in the morning was 85 degrees, I was so happy to see their smiling faces as they moved all the furniture around in my house to fit on all the chairs and redesign an event that started at 10:30 in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning so that no one died from the heat. And so a very, very public and special thank you, because of their gracious attitude and their wonderful kindness, to Albert Camargo, Eddie Carbajero, thank you, Manny Gutierrez, and Jose Daniel. And Manny's new to our district, so a special thank you to him for coming out and joining the group as a real member of our Fullerton School District community. We appreciate all of you, and I wanted to be sure that they knew that not only did I appreciate their help and the members of the Fullerton Education Foundation, but all of our principals, our PTA presidents, and our foundation presidents owe their life to those gentlemen. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this meeting. I think that the Fullerton School District is the heart and soul of this city and this community. And our staff, our leadership, and this board is committed to addressing not just nutrition, not just the fields that our children play on when they're in school or through our community groups, not just the social, emotional, but our facilities, their safety, online, in person. And we have so much to cover tonight. So I'm just, thank you to everybody that continues to make FSD such a high-functioning district. Do we have any information from our associations this evening, Anna? Start
President,
DLAC.
President Decor, I'll be reading on behalf of DLAC. Good evening, President Decor, school board members, Superintendent Dr. Pletka, Executive Cabinet, and all families present and listening. We would like to acknowledge and celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, which is observed by many from September 15th through October 15th. Our Hispanic families are proud to share our heritage and culture, and we are looking forward to seeing all the wonderful activities at the school sites. At our first DLAC meeting, is September 22nd at Maple Elementary. We will have a Otomi art activity to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. The work of art comes from the Otomi embroidery technique from the Otomi people living on the Central Plateau of Mexico. The pieces of embroidery are called tinangos and are made of vibrant colors and unique floral and animal designs. The arts TOSA teacher on special assignment, Sandy Bretz, and the arts team will be leading the activity. Please join us for this wonderful celebration. The DLAC committee is very thankful to Dr. Linda Soltero Ruiz, Ruth Gare, and Alma Mata for all their support and guidance in being a voice for our community. Thank you to all teachers, staff, and administrators for their hard work and for supporting our families and students. We truly appreciate all of you. Sincerely, Vanessa Estrella.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have a report from PTA this evening?
We do not have a report from PTA tonight.
Do we have a report from CSEA this evening?
We do.
All right,
I'll read on behalf of Tanya.
thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Pletka, President Decor, members of the board, cabinet, and community. I am Tatiana Ortega, CSEA First Vice President. Yesterday, CSEA held its first chapter meeting of the new school with success. Cherie and Marlene from our executive board shared their amazing experiences over the summer at our CSEA annual conference and CSEA Women's Conference, both held in Reno, Nevada. CSEA President Tanya and myself have also been meeting alongside VITA, FESMA, and Cabinet, planning our PAL retreats for this school year and looking forward to continuing the amazing PAL partnership with FSD is flourishing in. The school year for many of us is coming to this balance of focusing in after the rush of the new school year, where it seems we can all take a nice breath of fresh air. I look forward to what this school year has in store and what new exciting things FSD has up their sleeves. Thank you, members of the board, cabinet, and community for your time tonight.
Thank you. FETA? It's a team effort.
Oh yeah, it's a team effort. I needed my Vannas today. So good evening, President Decor, board members, Dr. Pletka, homesick, hopefully live streaming, I'm sure, cabinet and guests. School has been in session for 21 days. I know you guys said months. We count in days as a kindergarten teacher forever. But really, who's counting? Just me. Teachers and staff are working hard in implementing new materials and strategies that they have purchased and learned over the summer. Commonwealth is planning for their Disney theater production. The Literacy Garden is in bloom at Woodcrest. Maple's walls are talking to us as we pass by. Raymond is using their CTA IFT grants to bring science to life in their dual language programs, and many other things I have yet to visit or hear about this year. At our August Rep Council, FETA made a motion to thank and support 2 of our district foundations that help support our teachers and especially our students. These 2 awesome programs have provided funding for our students to go on field trips, buy supplies for the classrooms, bring new strategies into the classrooms, bring talented guests and performers into our classrooms, etc. Our students have been blessed by both of these great programs. We would like to present $1,000 to our Fullerton Education Foundation and $1,000 to our All the Arts Foundation. The oversized checks were made by Rebecca Cash, who was a former teacher, and all the arts instructor, and an encore teacher. FETA appreciates and thanks you again for all you do for our staff and students. So here's the check. I don't know who we
As
give
a
them
member
to.
of both those foundations, from my heart, thank you. And we really appreciate the teacher support, because we not only ask your support for financial gain so we can do more, but both foundations appreciate your support because we've asked teachers to do things in their classroom that they may not be up to doing, whether it's teaching art or mentioning our programs and teaching robotics, esports, whatever it is. And we truly appreciate what our teachers and leaders do to support the two foundations, and the financial support you're showing for us today. Really heartfelt.
Well, we appreciate you, truly. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
You
Yeah,
can give
I
it to
think
me
the board
and I'll
can
see if
designate
that's.
Trustee
is-
Sugarman to receive the oversized checks. I'll
Thank
take
you.
the real
All right.
ones.
Is Phil here? I didn't see him. We'll make sure Chad to give it to Phil, and the other one I'll take. Thank you.
Is that how big the banks are that you
Yes, I
cash
got
those
it.
checks at?
Chad?
And as long as we're thanking,
how
we're going to
nice.
thank Dr. Hammett and his team for the instructional minutes information. We look forward to continuing the discussion soon in order to bring back equity in this area across all school sites. And just a reminder to school board members, FETA is interested in meeting with you regularly. I've heard from 2, so we've already set up some meeting dates. Yeah, I'm not going to say who I heard from, but I am going to say October's coming and I will haunt, so just so you know. And then last, our kindergarten and TK class want to thank Scott and his team for getting us our toilets. So thank you very much.
I don't know if we should be applauding for that. Kind of,
For sure.
Remember, the kids want clean new toilets. It's very
And so
important.
do the teachers.
Well done, Trustee Behrman.
All right,
Thank you so much. FSMA, please.
Yes, President of the Corps, board members, Dr. Bob Pleka, Dr. Chad Hammett, cabinet members. My name is Mike McAdam. I'm the Director of Purchasing Contracts, Warehouse, and Print Shop for the district. Welcome back to the 23-24 school year. We've had a very smooth start. We're fully prepared for staff and students and families return to school day one. Both classified and certificated staff are ready to go, make a great positive impact on our students' lives. We're getting ready back to school, supporting our teachers and classified staff, and we're ready to work together, resolve, strive, push forward daily, continue making Fullerton School District the best there is, the best there was, and the best it can be.
That was great. Thank you.
No money?
Hannah, do we have any public comments this evening?
We do not have any public comments tonight.
All right. Well, just remind the public, if there's anyone here that wishes to make a public comment, you can follow the instructions on the yellow posters in the back. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, 2023, please?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comment, discussion, questions, changes?
I wanted to thank Anna for adding the amendment to the July 25th minutes, adding the information on our SLO and the role, so to better reflect what we had talked about in the meeting, so thank you.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Any changes to tonight's agenda? Or if not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written? Chad, any recommendations to move anything around?
There's a change in the,
Yes, we did make a couple of changes to item D, which is the a job description for an arts lead teacher. There were a couple of changes to verb tenses and a change to the introductory paragraph. Very small changes, mainly grammatical edits, but would ask that whoever moves for the agenda tonight would move the agenda include that revised job description.
And that's on the consent.
It's on the
Yes.
consent.
That's on consent, right?
Let's address consent first, then, if everybody's ready, since we're discussing it. Does anybody have any items that they wish to pull, or if not pull, comment upon or highlight?
Yes.
Please.
First of all, item A, which is the gifts from our wonderful community. And, whoops, sorry.
It's a lot of gifts.
A lot of gifts. And there are a couple of things I want to highlight. I want to highlight the amount of money that was donated to Hermosa School, almost $31,000. You know that that's going to make a huge difference in programs in their school, especially their 6th grade outdoor ed. And then the next one is, I hope you all notice the 17 donations from parents for arts at Parks Junior High. That will make a difference. Giving some money for programs you believe in makes a huge difference for schools. And I want to thank every one of those parents who wanted to support their children's and their child's program of interest. Thank you. It's a wonderful thing to do. And if you'll go back up, Chad, to page 1. Whoops, where did I lose it? I left my paper on the airplane. Oh. Well, I'm going to leave it like that right now. I'd also like to pull items G and H. They're two really important things that I'd hate to get lost in the shuffle of our busy, busy evening. G is our resolution for the week of the school administrator. School administrators, we love you, we appreciate you, and we know that the quality of education is greatly enhanced by the leadership of our administrators. So it should be every week is Administrators Week, and we thank you. And the second one is a resolution for Red Ribbon Week. This started so long ago, and the point of it is to remind people to keep their bodies safe, to not do foolish things. And we appreciate our staff taking time to remind students and the entire community of the importance of Red Ribbon Week. So thank you.
Any other comments or highlighting of the consent agenda?
Yeah, I also wanted to kind of highlight, again, the outdoor science camps. Again, a lot of schools having us, approve those contracts with those science camps. Again, seeing it as a huge value at our school districts and our school sites, kind of moving forward with that. So also highlighting to what Trustee Sugarman mentioned also with Hermosa and some of those programs there. I just think it's super valuable to kind of see that and finding ways that we can support our kids that might not have those opportunities to go learn outside of the classroom, which I think is really valuable.
Thanks. Anything else?
I have something. I have a few. I wanted to bring out and talk a little bit more about our arts lead teacher. I think that I know that we'll have some kind of presentation at some point about our art program strategy. With our new Prop 28 money, we have money to put into arts, understanding how important it is to add to the everyday lives of our children. And we've been doing a great job with this. And I'm very happy and pleased to see this arts lead teacher, and understanding that it's more than one teacher, and bringing somebody in to just really be able to be a champion for each one of the genres. And I think it shows our community how much we do care about arts education and how much we do put into it as a priority for us to make sure that it is infused. So thank you guys for that work and making that happen. Also, item G with our Week of the Administrator, reading the whereases when we talk about our administrators are exceptional. That's something that's actually in there, and I like the fact that we do state that our Fullerton District has exceptional administrators, and that schools that are led by great principals are great districts. And so thank everybody for that, as well as great administrators and district staff and superintendents. So I'm pleased and I'm blessed to be able to be here and be part of this group, and we so appreciate everything everybody does. Red Ribbon Week, very, very important. I think I'm hoping that our schools will use this and really bring in speakers and use this as an opportunity to educate our students and our parents on, things like fentanyl and everything else that's out there. So it's really very important that we take this back and spend that time with that. ROP, I think there's an item BB on our agenda today, collaborating with the North Orange County ROP for our middle school teachers, being able to bring in a cohort of middle school teachers to walk alongside ROP teachers to help them with those career technical duties and curriculum and support, and having the ROP instructors really support our instructors as they are teaching our middle school students. And that's a great, CTE is huge, and I think this is a great opportunity to have that collaboration. From what I'm understanding, we're the first middle school group to be able to do that. So kudos for that collaboration. We thank you. Moving on, DD, I wanted to comment on that. Bringing in trauma-informed care and trauma resources to teach or to provide information for professional development for our teachers and our district staff, as well as our parents, really focusing on trauma-informed care. So very important, especially now with all of the issues that are out there with our students. And I'm really, again, excited about this one. And so thank you for doing that. Sorry, guys. And you keep going. No, I think that was it. There's a lot of things in our agenda, and I think that, as we go into the double digits, AABB, there's a lot of things on there, and I think that some people think, you look at it and it's the same old stuff, but really, truly, it's a lot of great information, and unless you read the agenda, you don't really get into the nitty-gritty of some of this stuff. Because we don't always talk about it. And so bringing that out and making sure that people know the stuff that's in here is really, really important work that we do. And that we really do pay attention to it. And we do appreciate everybody going on conferences and learning and doing this and that. So we truly, truly thank you. It's the end of my comments.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on tonight's consent agenda? Wonderful. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as amended with the changes to consent item D?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Great, moved and seconded. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Great, thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Let's go ahead and go back to the agenda approval. Dr. Hammett, for the flow of the meeting and the presentations tonight, do you have any suggested changes, or is it good to go?
It's good to go as is.
All right. Any trustees wish to have any changes in tonight's agenda order? All right.
No.
Well, if I could, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as is.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you so much, everyone. The motion
Was it
carries
something we said?
5-0. Good night, everyone.
Move the consent.
Dr.
agenda.
Coughlin, would you kindly take the podium and tell us about the facilities master plan?
I was going to talk about some things happening at Maple and Pack Drive, but those principals left. And Woodcrest. President Chakor, trustees, Dr. Hammett, cabinet guests, thank you for being here tonight. This time I'm going to have a few guests come up here, and they're going to be talking to you very briefly. I won't be talking that long. A few months ago, earlier this year, we started talking about the possibility of a potential school bond in our future. Well, a facilities school bond. And one of the things you need to do is say, well, do we have a need for that? What is our need? And so what you do is you create a facility needs assessment. You go out and you take an assessment of your facilities to see where you're at. And if you were to repair everything and fix everything and bring it all up to speed, where would that be? And so we employed PBK architects to perform that facility needs assessment. This is not the final product. This is basically an update of what they've been working on for the last 6 months. And so they're going to go through tonight kind of the methodology of how they arrived at their numbers. It's a pretty big number. I think it's safe to say we have a need in the hundreds of millions of dollars of facility needs for our 22 plus sites that are 60 to 70 years old. So the need is there. They're going to go through that methodology. Concurrently, we also ran a survey we sent a survey out to all 4th through 8th grade students, all staff members, all parents. The survey is still open. We received back approximately 1,100 student surveys, over 627 parent surveys, and 333 staff members submitted their surveys, took the survey, telling us what are the things they would like to see should money be available at our school sites. We're not, I provided that in that notebook. We're not going to go through this page by page tonight and go over these results. Tonight's to just kind of, imagine big swimming pool. We're kind of starting to dip our toes into the pool a little bit, but we're not going to start doing a lot of laps here. This is an ongoing process. Over the next 6 months, what will happen, staff will go through these results, go through the survey results, and start to prioritize what we feel based on what we've heard are the needs and the wants at our sites. We'll then bring that back to the board. We'll share those priorities with the board, and from there, based on the amount of money that is available, should a bond be passed, then we move forward. So that's kind of the process. This gets you used to some of the numbers. Construction is not cheap. It's quite expensive. So there's some very big numbers in here. So I'm going to turn this over right now to Yang Yu and Kristen Rose there with PBK Architects, and they've got a brief presentation to kind of just, we're going to choose a sample, one of the schools. They're going to kind of tell you their methodology, and then if you have any questions, we can answer your questions. Again, it's not to prioritize tonight. It's not to get in and say, what about this and that? It's to just familiarize yourself with this report. So I will turn this over to, here we go, and there's the little.
Okay, perfect. I apologize, I'm heightfully challenged. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen Rose. I am joined by Young Yu, a principal at PBK Architects. So we have been working together to develop your facility needs assessment summary report, which is what we're presenting here this evening, but we're also going to talk about kind of the master planning process and how that works and what the ultimate goals are and the methodology. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in control. Thank you. So first off is the purpose of the facility master planning and facility master planning in general. Essentially, it comes down to 3 things. We want to know what to do, so which projects at which sites, when to do it, what's the order of those projects, and how much it costs. How much money do we need to complete those projects? Next. This is a multi-phased process, and what we've outlined is a very high-level overview. This is complicated. We're looking at all of your facilities, all of your building systems. We're trying to understand your educational goals and your instructional methodologies, how you want to teach in the classroom, and how your facility should support that teaching and learning experience. And so what that means is we start with data collection. We want to understand what's the existing context of your facilities, what's the history of your facilities, what's happening there now, and we collect as much data as we can. And then it's boots on the ground, it's facility assessments. So teams of architects and engineers have assessed all of your buildings system by system, item by item, looking at all of your spaces, determining any deficiencies, what are the needs of those spaces, what is the existing condition, and they looked at all of those items and developed a rating for condition, and that gives us a snapshot of where we are in time. From there, we work with district stakeholders to understand what's the vision, what's the long-term goal for what your facility should do in order to support your educational outcomes. A lot of that's going to come from that survey that we were talking about. It's going to come from your educational priorities. It gives us an understanding of the lens through which we make future prioritization decisions. And from there, that's when that final master plan actually comes together, where we know these are the projects that we're going to be looking at. These are the projects that are going to go into that final master plan. And then we develop that implementation plan that aligns those costs and priorities, and then funding. And funding is a big thing in the state of California for school districts because you guys are limited in terms of what you can access for funding. Funding for school facilities is intended to be funded at the local level. It doesn't come from the state unless you're accessing it through the state school facility program, which requires you to bring matching funds. So there's a big component there when it comes to funding. You're going to see some big numbers tonight. I want to point out a few things. One is I do this for school districts all throughout the state of California. Your number is not above average. It's actually right in line with what we're seeing for a lot of school districts across the state. And the other thing is that what we see is that the total cost to bring all your facilities up to excellent condition, right? That might be a big cost. That doesn't mean you're going to take that cost on immediately all at once, right? That's why we prioritize. And then also within the context of funding, right? Because you have limited funding sources, you don't have a consistent source of funding for facilities, and most communities don't always understand that there is no consistent source of funding for school facilities, that you really do have to pick and choose, and everybody's in that same boat. Next. This just goes over life cycle models. So, buildings aren't static. Buildings are, in some ways, like living organisms. The systems within buildings, they become obsolete. They deteriorate over time. And so you install something and you are able to maintain it to the best of your ability with, again, your limited funds. But eventually you're going to need to replace those things, and that becomes the life cycle. I'll give you an example everybody can see. We've got carpet in here, right? Life cycle on carpet is generally 20 to 25 years, depending on its use, etc. So we know that carpet is going to be replaced in a space every 20 to 25 years, okay? Next. This just goes over all of the systems that were evaluated. So the teams that walked all of the sites looked at site and infrastructure. So they're looking at everything from landscaping to ADA pathways. They're looking at site furnishings, anything that's related to the site. They also looked at building envelope. So your building envelope is kind of your weather protection, right? It's your exteriors, your windows, your doors, your roofs. They're looking at specifically a group of experts looked at your roofs, and that's the beam team. And so they look at they look at your roof systems and the age and the needed life cycle. Next. We're also looking at mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. So all of your infrastructure that supports all of your needs in terms of functionality of those buildings, and then interiors, right? So that's the finishes. That's the things you see on a regular basis, but keeping in mind that there's all kinds of infrastructure and kind of the bones of a space that really support that interior space. And so your interiors are things like your carpet, your walls, your ceilings, lighting, things like that. Next. As the teams walked through each of the spaces, they provided a condition rating for all of the items that were assessed. And so it's a 1 to 4 scale. And essentially it goes through whether something is like new, it's in excellent condition, does not need to be replaced in the next 10 years. That life cycle replacement time frame is 10 years or more. Good condition is anything that we're seeing normal wear and tear, but there's not any huge deficiencies. That might get a 3, but we know that the life cycle replacement is about 5 to 10 years there. Anything in fair condition, again, reaching the end of its useful life, replacement is needed within about 3 to 5 years, and then anything in poor condition, we're seeing some deficiencies, and probably, usually that might be some deferred maintenance or things that you've put off or haven't been able to do from your maintenance fund, and so that might be in poor condition and needs some immediate attention. I also want to point out, in some cases, when something becomes obsolete because of code changes, for example, ADA upgrade requirements or path of travel requirements, that would receive a 1 rating because it does not meet code compliance, and it would have to be upgraded in order for any other projects on that site to commence. Okay, next. And then we were able to provide an FCI analysis, which is a facility condition index. And what that is the comparison of the required repair cost to the replacement cost of that facility. And so if your condition rating says here's the condition of that system, the FCI is the comparison or the percentage of that system as compared to the full replacement of a facility. And so you can see, if you're 0 to 5%, you're doing pretty good. 5 to 10%. You've got some items that are nearing the end of their useful life. 10 to 30, that's probably where you need to start to focus on. And anything in 30% or more, those are some immediate items. And again, those tend to be one-offs or very specific items, things that have lingered for a while, or maybe things that are related to code compliance. Next. Okay, so this is the summary district-wide of all the costs that have been identified for projects. I want to talk about what is in this. Right now, what you're seeing is the estimation of construction cost to repair these items or systems. Included in that is soft costs. So those are costs that go into fees like planning fees, DSA fees, any kind of fee or fees for consultants or design teams or anything that's not related to the materials and labor for actually constructing any kind of project. And that's your project cost. It does not include escalation. Escalation, I'm sorry?
Oh, I do have a quick question. I just want to clarify, this is the cost to meet those very high needs, sort of things are falling apart needs that you identified, not like we'd love to build a new performing arts center, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I'll get to that,
Yeah.
and kind of where this lies within the development of those kinds of projects.
Okay.
And we can talk about that a little bit. Let me cover escalation, and then I'll talk about that.
Okay.
So escalation is essentially the time value of money, and think of it as inflation, right? And in construction, we typically see escalation anywhere between 6 and 12%. I have to say, construction costs in the last 5 to 10 years have been extremely volatile. And so a lot of times what we're doing now is building in a lot of contingency to allow for that, because construction costs increase kind of rapidly right now. So this is the cost to repair your existing deficiencies and bring your facilities to like new condition. What we haven't done yet, this is the foundation for your final master plan. What we haven't done yet is to identify how we're going to prioritize these needs with those educational components like you're talking about. As an example, what we might see is you might have a portable classroom, right, that needs some repairs. And maybe the cost of those repairs are substantial. Portable classrooms are intended to be temporary, and so you might want to look at, well, maybe we should replace that portable classroom instead of fixing that HVAC unit and replacing that carpet, et cetera. Maybe we want to replace that portable classroom with permanent construction, right? So this assessment does not include those types of items yet. That's the next step for us, is to look at what are your overall goals for how you want to approach your implementation plan, and how can we factor that in. What we anticipate is that those kinds of projects will cannibalize some of these scopes of work and will be reevaluated within that context. So if, for example, you're going to be replacing 4 portables with permanent construction, we would cost out the permanent construction and then remove all of the scopes of work related to repairing those portables. Does that make sense? Okay. Next. This is just a listing of what is in that graph, so you can see it. But your total, and excuse me because I don't have it in front of me because I know it's about $500 million in construction costs, and then we get up to 900 with escalation. Thank you. Again, for your size of district, for the number of sites that you have, you are in a very reasonable kind of place when it comes to the amount of work that we would estimate for what is needed to bring your facilities up from existing condition, again, to a like new condition. Also, when you think about for your FCI, it's in comparison to what it is to, say, build a new elementary school from scratch, right? And so what that means, though, is over time, this is your need, right? What we now need to do is look at how we're going to prioritize these needs and spread that out and implement it over time. Your facilities needs are ongoing, just like your operational needs are ongoing, just like when you, for example, pay teachers, right? You know that cost, it doesn't happen just once in a year. It's every single year. And then you might have a big number at the end of that. This is the same kind of thing where you have to put in resources to repair your facilities, and you're going to do that every single year, and over time that total number ends up being very large, right? The only kind of caveat here is that where you have a sustained mechanism for funding things like your operational costs, there isn't a sustained mechanism for funding facilities other than your local community. That was established with Prop 13 back in the 70s and all of that. The intent is that local communities are responsible for funding school facilities. And the best way to do that on an ongoing basis is to, one, to educate your community so that they understand the need and the impetus for funding school facilities, but to keep that kind of going over the long term so that you can develop the facilities that support your educational program, maintain them on a continuous basis. Next. So this is just a sample site of what you're seeing in the report. And then the next phase, again, will kind of take this and dive into more priorities and developing that implementation plan. And Young can kind of talk about this in more detail, just what's included. But what you'll see is a site profile page that has just some basic site data. A lot of this is just helpful for anybody coming in after us from the planning side. It's reference information that will help them understand, here's the size of the facility, just some basic information. Next. The next piece is a visual representation of the condition in your condition assessment map. And so the average condition rating is then mapped to each of the buildings on the site. And then your FCI index. It actually, the Facility Condition Index report has your average condition rating by building as well as your FCI by building. This here, I wanted to give you a snapshot and overview of what a school site estimate would look like by priority. And so you can see that for this site, priority 1 is about 13 million, priority 2, 11, and it kind of goes down from there. So really you're looking at what would you maybe be doing in that priority 1? What are those projects that you would start to bite off first? And again, some of these are, because this is done from a needs perspective, in terms of building systems, I want to point out there's going to be some things in there like infrastructure items that we see are reaching somewhat of the end of their life cycle. We might recommend that they be replaced in priority 1. But based on your maintenance routines or things like that, we might be able to move that to a priority 2. So that's kind of the work that we'll be doing with staff next, is to see what are our real priorities, how can we maybe cannibalize some of this, can we move some of this scope over to later priorities, how can we shift things around so that it really balances all of the needs of all of our stakeholders. And then you'll see in the report there's a detailed listing of all of the needs, and this goes kind of item by item. So you'll see what the estimated costs for things like flooring and roofing and electrical and plumbing and all of those individual items. It's really detailed from a community standpoint, but for your planning team, it's actually really, really helpful for them to be able to see individual costs of items, so that, especially too, if your maintenance team or your facilities team has things planned for, things like carpet replacement and whatnot, that can come out of the overall master plan and gets funded in different ways. Yeah. Okay, so the next steps are to develop the solutions and further define the scopes of work. Like you were saying, it's aligning those facilities with educational outcomes, bringing in the stakeholder input, and making sure we've got clear priorities and developing that implementation plan. Incorporating some enrollment capacity analysis too, making sure we have that layer of understanding folded into the plan. So when we're looking at not only how much space you have, but how it's being used. As an example, Universal Transitional Kindergarten and the expansion of that program has an effect on your facilities, in particular the types of facilities and the support space. As we heard earlier, you got restrooms for your kindergarten and TK spaces. That's one of those components that gets affected, it gets layered into the master plan. And then it's developing that long-term implementation plan. What are those projects that come first, next, and further on? All right. Any questions?
Actually, I do. When I look at your graph at the beginning of which schools need the most work and everything, parks pops up at the very top. We've redone parks in the last 15, 20 years 2 times entirely. We closed the school down and redid it. Then when I looked at your charts, everything in parks is yellow, okay, minor repairs. And yet the cost is in the top 3 costs of all school districts, with Valencia Park, which is an old district that really deserves a lot of TLC. So I'm not quite sure how this happens.
Well, for one, it's size. So Parks is much larger than many of the other sites. So when you talk about, the cost for, say, carpet replacement, it's just the quantity of it is much higher. So that's part of it.
Okay.
When I look at that, it's a very large site. The other thing is when you're talking about, it was done in the last 10 to 15 years.
Twice.
So I would ask, in terms of what's in there, a lot of the top high dollar items were for major infrastructure systems, things like electrical distribution. Those types of things don't typically get redone when you're doing things like interior renovations or painting or things like that. And so that's in there. It's captured because engineering teams have gone in and said, maybe your electrical system is the original. Yeah. And so that might need to be replaced. But that's one of those things where we would talk to staff and work with them to get a better understanding of the true nature of that. Because, again, engineers are looking at it from a very kind of nuts and bolts technical perspective of, if it was installed when that site was built, maybe it's ending end of its useful life, but maybe we need more detail.
So we would say that also.
Thank you.
With that having been said, I mean, those are the items that we're looking for input on as well, because those things kind of come up to you and you have the history of it and tells you that been replaced twice in the last 15 years. So we've created a big database now, and we're able to kind of get the look that we want, and depending on what things we're looking for. But something like that, we can go back and research it and say, okay, what are the things that are accumulating into that large number, and come back to you and say, these are the things. Or we could say, oh, maybe there's this number that happened. I mean, there's something that triggered that, right? So we're not saying this is perfect. This is a draft that we're looking for input, and that's perfect input right there, where we can go back and say, we can confirm that number, or we could say, oh, maybe something was added there that maybe shouldn't have, right? So we can go back and do those kinds of studies as well. But we're giving you a lot to look at. So.
That you have. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, and I think that brings up the kind of the question I was getting at, is the total number needed to bring everything to green,
Oh,
you know,
we can't do
perfect
that.
situation, isn't necessarily where we would focus, right? And
Right.
like I'm looking at Rolling Hills, the majority of their buildings are red, right? So we might say it's more important to focus on the worst first rather than, you know, prioritizing who need, you know, we need to. Sorry, that makes Rolling Hills sound bad, doesn't it? I'm sorry, I love Rolling Hills, and you're not the worst school. I'm just saying we want to look at the conditions of our schools and look at where do we want to prioritize. It's different than the total amount that's needed, right?
And I think to remember, this is to bring everything up to like new.
Yeah.
I have 3 cars. I have a 2019, I have a 2017, I have a 2004, right? It would be great if my 2019 was a 2023 and like new. We don't need to do that right now. Are there some things we can do on that 2019? There sure are. You know, maybe we get some new tires. So I want everybody to understand, if there are some sites that are almost like new now, if a school bond passes, and when it does, there'll be stuff for all of the schools. But we have some schools that are farther behind, older, that need a lot more work. And so that's why I caution you about that huge number. And that's why the next step is to kind of go through and prioritize those needs. Do we need to put some new tires on that car? Are we okay on that one, or do we need to do something on the other one? Those are the kind of things that we have. Or what would we like to have on that facility? Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland, and thank you so much for this presentation and for the incredible amount of information that you've provided here. I can't say I'm surprised by any of this information because I've been to our schools, and you know, my elementary school and my junior high look almost exactly the same as when I was there as a student, you know, 30 years ago. So this is not surprising at all. The numbers, there's definitely some sticker shock, but I understand what you're saying about where a district our age and our size would be in terms of these numbers. I don't think, Dr. Copeland, that we're taking any action on this report. This has been generated at our request, and this is what your company does. And so we now have this information. And again, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board just regarding the information that we've begun to digest here?
Awesome. Really appreciate it. It's well done and so good. Thank you.
Trustee Berryman, Trustee Talavera, did you have something you wanted to maybe inquire about or follow up on?
No, so one of the comments that you made was that some of the buildings might need to come to compliance before even considering, right, new carpets or new light fixtures or whatever that may be. How would we find that out on, or like, how's that? Because I know that you said that they get not flagged, I forget what the term was, but they get the 1 rating?
Yeah, so they would have received a condition rating of a 1.
Okay.
And usually what you'll see in there is a line item for ADA compliance. Okay. Typically what we see is what's called path of travel. So schools are required to adhere to higher standards than, say, your home or even a commercial property. And they have to be approved by the Division of the State Architect. which is concerned with structural and fire life safety, and also implements practices to make sure that schools adhere to the Americans with Disabilities Act. That means that there are accessible paths of travel throughout your campus, and a lot of times older schools have been built prior to ADA codes, and those codes change over time continuously. There's always kind of updates to what is required. DSA also has additional standards for what is required for school facilities that are updated on a regular basis. And they require that you address those needs at the time of any other modernization project. You will not be allowed to move forward with other projects unless you address those needs. So we have to factor those in, that if you want to modernize a building over here, but you have an inaccessible ramp or a slope that is too steep, DSA is going to make you address that in order to modernize that building.
So to give you an example, for example, you'll see a lot of projects where you're putting in a shade structure somewhere, right, on a campus, and you think, well, it's just shade structure. That's all we're doing. But because DSA has requirements where they need you to upgrade the path of travel, the accessible parking, and those kinds of things, it becomes part of that shade structure project that you have to do it together. And so there's things that come together, not just that project itself, but it gets added on to make sure that it gets upgraded. So.
Okay. Also, you have some acronyms here, FF and E.
Oh, okay. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay.
So those are all the things that are kind of like appendages to this space, but also furniture, casework, whiteboards, kind of group all of those things together. And for clarity purposes, our final report will include some definitions for all of these things. We'll add that in there for you. So that's what that includes. And again, I also want to point out that this is a high-level view of those needs, a high-level estimation. You haven't done any decision-making in terms of what that is, so we give a general estimation of what that could be, but as you define projects in the implementation phase, those numbers become more concrete.
What would be the next steps in your ongoing analysis?
So the next steps in about the 5-6 months is Scott, myself, the architect, we're going to be sitting down. We're also going to look at the last bond because we did go through a kind of a process of what our needs were there. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at this. We're going to start to take the data from the surveys, from the students, the staff, the parents, and we're going to start to prioritize based on district needs, the focus that we're going. Once that happens, we'll reassemble, the team will put this back together. They'll start to run the numbers again, a little more specific in prioritizing by sites, and then that will be presented to the board. So they can kind of we can get an idea of what are our, can we do priority 1, priority 2, and if money's available from the state, we can do priority 3. Do we want to move some stuff up? And so that would be the next step. That's going to take place in the next 6 months.
I was going to say, would you be doing a priority by school site?
Yes.
Thank you.
Which is the nice thing about the surveys that we did, because the results came back from students, there may be a school where a high priority at that school is drop off, pick up in the parking lot. Another school, they're fine with that. That's not a priority for that school. And so we're going to try to integrate that in. Now there's some things, the plumbing, the electrical, the roofing, we need to do those. But there will also be some other things that we can integrate in based on the need and the want.
On the student surveys, some schools had huge number of students respond, and some schools had 3.
3.
Yes. Statistically, could you highlight on the bottom when you redo this page what is statistically significant? Like, do 3 responses mean very much to us?
It does not. And so
I don't want
the
to
survey is still
discount
open,
students.
and this is an ongoing process. And so we're going to push them out again and get the information back. And it's for fourth through eighth grade students is who we gave this to.
So please,
We'll
like,
indicate that.
if it's, or highlight the ones that are statistically significant, because that's really important. Same with the parents, I guess. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Yeah, Trustee Hanchett.
I know the next step is for staff to then just look at priorities and come with some recommendations for us. I think I'm struggling on how to even put this into words, but I think it would be helpful for me to see a foundation of kind of the values of ways we make those decisions about priorities. Because I could see, you know, some people could say, well, every school gets the same amount of money. That's not what we want to do, right? That could be, but that could be a priority or a value system in some school districts. It could be the greatest needs for repairs. You know, if the toilets aren't working, we start there. It could be we want to infuse some energy in schools that are struggling and give them a vision for a new way of approaching school and bring life and energy to a specific campus. So I would like to see recommendations around how we make those hard decisions when I think it's going to be somewhat controversial. and there are going to be differences of opinion. So I'd like to see what's our foundation here.
Okay, and when we, just working on, when we put it together, and of course, we'll be working with the superintendent. The superintendent will be communicating with the board, and we'll get that dialogue going, put that together in the report, and you'll see how we put that out. And again, what we present is not the final. It's not the final. Yes, we do have needs, electrical, plumbing. You know, those things need, the roofing, those things need to be taken care of. After that, then it gets into some of the wants. And the want will vary from school to school. And it's going to vary from program to program and school to school. And so that's where we'll outline those and how we came to those decisions. Again, it's not the final decision. It's a process.
I have a question as far as sequence with this. So now we've got our master plan. You're going to go back with staff and do what you just said you're going to do. Meanwhile, we are still looking at if in fact we will be supporting and sending a bond out. I guess my question is as we're going through this and prioritizing, from my memory, when you're prioritizing your facility needs so that if in fact you do go for a bond, then your communication plan is, I'm going to tell my constituents what this bond is going to go for. So would all the priorities and all of those where we want to, you know, our priority and what we need to do come prior to going out for a facility bond, so that when people are considering this, that they know why they're considering it and what they're going to be voting for?
If the bond was November of 2024, then yes, that would be out in the springtime. That would be out in March. You would have that 6 months before the bond election, yes. And again, this is just, we've had the discussion about a school bond. This just justifies, yes, there's a need to continue the discussion about going out for a school bond. And that's really just supports that conversation in case anybody asks, why are we doing this? Right. We have a need. Now from there, we're going to start to prioritize our need over the next 6 months. And then that information can be shared out.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, one last one. There was mention also of aligning state dollars with matching funds through the district.
Right, that's another piece to it. So it's going through and looking at our eligibility. Eligibility is based on when was the last time any work was done at the sites, enrollment, do we have declining enrollment in the district, its sites, what money's available for new construction, modernization. There's different, so there's eligibility money that if there's a state bond and there's money available, then we get in line for that. It's no guarantee. So we will be working with the consultants to determine our eligibility. One of the things you do is you kind of put together a plan with priority 1, 2, and 3, knowing that, well, we're going to do 1 and 2, and if some money's available from the state, we'll do 3, because it's not a guarantee.
But you'll be working with
we would be
consultants
working
on
with a
that.
consultant to try to determine, not every
Identify-
site has eligibility.
Yeah. So that's, I
Right.
guess that was my question is how do we determine eligibility and then,
There's some calculations, and not every site has eligibility in it. Just because you have eligibility doesn't mean you're going to get funding. The money has to be available.
Do you know if there's still a backlog from the last bond, right? They still haven't paid on what is in the pipe, right?
There's about $7 billion worth of projects right now. And so the proposed, the next school bond is somewhere around 10 billion. So if you fund that backlog, you've got only 3 billion left, right? That goes very quickly. Projects are constantly getting in line. Essentially, we see the state facility program as a reimbursement program because of the length of time to move through that backlog. And so it has the capability of extending your program. And, you know, as you finish a project and if money is available, then you can start to fund and extend your bond program. But that's why your local funding, your general obligation bonds are critically important. On occasion, when we have things like a global pandemic, we had a governor who added funds to the SFP program. So he added an additional kind of 10 billion or so for various programs. Keeping in mind the SFP program, it gets complicated. There's different pots of money for different things. CTE has its own grant. Hardship has its own grant. There's all kinds of pots of money for you to access. But yeah, it's just there isn't really a consistent source of funding. You guys are really, really reliant on that local source of funding. And some communities are able to continuously fund their general obligation bonds and keep those going and maintain their tax rates. But part of it is just education and understanding how that works.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much. Would you, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Would you leave the slide up on the newer private and clean bathroom student response during the break, please? Thank you. We'll take 5 minutes.
Think about bathrooms.
I don't know if that's on.
Chad?
Jeremy, do we have an update on our parent education for digital wellness program here?
We do.
Take it away.
All right. Just a moment. We'll get the slides up.
If everyone could just take a look at this slide, though. This is the response of our students regarding the facilities, and they were specifically asked if they would like newer, private, or cleaner bathrooms, and the dark blue represents most important. All right. All right. Jeremy, did you want to slide up? Or are you doing a presentation? Ah,
Yes,
here we go.
we're ready to go. Anna, can you do it off the Google slides so we can click a few, please? Yeah, more AI artwork for the group. Yeah, thanks to Wes, who could not be with us tonight. He has the AI spit out the artwork for us. So hold on, we're gonna get, yeah. There we go. Sorry, throwing Anna off her game because I wanted to click on a couple links, so it's not a PDF this time. Okay, so at our meeting 2 weeks ago, we talked about digital wellness for the entire district, and there was a request on some more specifics on parent education and how quickly we could get a plan together. So do know this is a first blush at the plan. This is not 100% complete on everything we're doing for the year. This is a starting point, but we promise to come back with 2 items, the board policy and with our parent education plan. So we have done that. I want to obviously be open to questions, but there is definitely more to come after this. So if you want to go ahead and go to that first slide, Miss Anna. One thing we have created is a parent internet safety website, which we've always had some form of it, but we've improved it a lot in the last month or so. So if you could click on that for me, Anna, where it says website, thank you. It is a work in progress because there's a lot of things we're adding to it. So that did not click on the video in the middle because it's me talking. But what we did was last year we did 5 different parent safety nights on parent cyber safety. And then we went into the studio. There we go. That's enough of that. Thank you, Anna. So we took our presentation that Josh and I had done for the parents at 5 different locations, Champions for Children, and then we went into our television studio and shot it as a television program that anybody can watch, and then we pushed that out through PTAs, parents, DLAC, to sort of say, hey, here's what's available if you weren't able to come to one of our events, right? So then we have over on the right, we have social media resources, gaming resources, parent control resources. So if you click on the parent control resources, this is where we're heading with the MDM piece that we talked about. MDM, oh gosh, I always forget that they're translating in the back and I speak really fast, so I'm going to now purposefully slow down because Shayla's back there probably massaging her cheeks. Sorry, Shayla. So mobile device management is MDM, and so we're going to be test running this at 2 sites. And to see how it goes, and to see how quickly parents can adapt to this. There are a whole bunch of videos that the company has put out, and then we have instructions on this site on how to turn on the closed captioning, because the company didn't make them in Spanish or Korean, but there are buttons on YouTube you can click and it'll have Korean or Spanish subtitles under it as it goes. So the nice thing about it also is it's all very self-explanatory because the videos walk through the app itself. So if the parents are looking at the app and see the video, it'll be the exact same thing in front of them. So even if they don't have the subtitles turned on, they should be able to follow along. And the basics of the MDM are, again, that parents will have the ability to do a significant amount of control. they'll be able to say, I'd want an hour of total screen time. I want YouTube gone. I want Safari gone. Now, one of the things we'll have to train parents on is if Safari's gone, they can't do homework because Safari is how they get onto their learning apps. So hopefully they give them homework time. And our training is going to be, or our parent control time is going to be 6 p.m. to 6:30 in the morning. The reason being that 6 p.m. is the latest time students are on campus. And if we gave control over at like 2:30 and parents started turning off Safari, it would interrupt the after-school programs while students are trying to get on Clever and trying to get on their apps. And the parents we'd have to be calling parents, please turn it back on for another hour, we need this. So we're going to start with that band. And the reason we stop in the morning at 6:30 is with 11,000 students, even in our testing we found sometimes when you say we want to give them Safari back, it's not instant. We've seen it take a little bit of time. So what we're saying is we turn off parent control at 6:30, giving the devices sort of an hour to refresh all their apps. What we don't ever want to do is disrupt instruction. So if our teachers start telling us, you know what, half the kids don't have Safari at 7 a.m. or at 8 a.m., we'll back that off to like 5:30 or whatever we need to make sure teachers are always ready to teach. So again, we'll be working with FIDA on what this looks like and talking to staff before it rolls out to those 2 schools and then before it rolls out beyond. But we're comfortable at 6:30 being a time that all apps will be ready for teachers, because sometimes they come right back, sometimes they just take a little bit longer, and we've been watching like 4 iPads. We haven't been watching 11,000 iPads, so we'll have to see what it takes. But typically, even though it's a larger number, it typically works about the same. I mean, what works for 4 will typically work about the same, because they're on their parents' network at that point in time in the morning. They're sort of dealing with it that way, and then when they get to our campus, it's really fast. So we should be good there. So we're in our parent overall presentation. Oh, sorry, you can go ahead and go back to the presentation. But, actually, one more, sorry, right there. If you go back to parent control resources, one thing we've added here recently that the board had just discussed with us is at the very bottom, the mobile phone. So we've added some platforms of what Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile already give to parents, just to give them a link to it. So we're not saying go get Verizon, go get T-Mobile, go get AT&T. What we're saying is if you already have AT&T, here's where you could learn more about how to control personal devices. Because controlling our devices is one thing, but our students know that we can see what they do and we can track what they do. So a lot of what happens, it's the bigger concern is what are they doing on their own devices at home? And that's where a big part of our parent education needs to come in, is how do you control those devices at home? So we're going to be putting more and more resources up here that will become a part of our training for our parents as well. Okay. So we have student contracts there for mobile devices, just in case a parent wants to have their students sign something. Again, don't have to use this, but it gives you some ideas if you want to create your own contract. And then we have links to home internet filtering and safety, geotagging resources. I just saw an article today about how dangerous it is to put your kids' pictures online, and just how it can really be such a problem that even at a young age you do not want. A lot of times you see like celebrities on the news and the kids are blurred out and you think, oh, the news did that. Well, a lot of them are doing that on their own social media. They're blurring their children's faces while the adults are still in the picture. So so that there's just a lot of education that we're going to try and get out to our parents.
Recently I was at a store that offered free monogramming or names, and I was sending something out for a child. And the person who did that work came upstairs to see me and said, is this for a child? Yes. We won't do that. We don't want any names on children's things.
Yeah. Okay. All right, if we can go back to the presentation. Anna, thank you. So we're looking at those 2 pilot schools, and those hopefully, the great thing about the mobile device manager is we will have the ability to see how many parents have adopted it. So then we can make some decisions around, do we need more parent meetings? Rosanna has offered for our SSAs to be trained so they can run like events in the MPRs for parents to come in and be helped through that process. So if we see that we've presented this, we've sort of talked it up, and we have 90% at one school and 10% at another, we know we need to go back into that one school it's at 10% and push a little bit more. I mean, 100% is a wonderful goal, but probably won't get there because there's only so many parents that want to do the device control, but we're really important for us to make sure that everybody knows that it's possible. Okay. All right. Next slide. Our parent education topics, this is some, not all. We're working with OCDE and our expert we brought in a couple weeks ago on some more topics as well. But things like the MDM controls, obviously it's important. That was a big ask from parents. Social media, phishing, controlling privacy in social media accounts, the dangers of sexting. Screen time, setting limits on all their devices. Again, personal devices, how to work with their vendors. iPhone and Android, there's a lot of huge differences between those two platforms that parents need to understand. Software options for monitoring the use of personal devices. What topics we cover in school. I'm going to show you a letter in just a moment. This was a request from Leonel who said, hey, how would I know what lesson might have been taught that day in school or this week that I could talk to my kids about? So we're going to be talking about what we cover first semester, and then again, as we develop those second semester lessons, we'll be doing that as well with our parent education piece. And then outside resources for them to learn more. So we're going to continue posting blogs and things like that, but this is again where OCDE comes in and will be very helpful. We have board members who have expertise in this area who give us great resources that'll go up on the website as well, and we'll be offering those. If there's a movie being shown down at a university, we should, who wants to go? It's free. You should go. It's really important. I was invited to one on sextortion that was really good, and it was like, man, I wish every parent in our district could be watching this movie right now because it would be very eye-opening for them to see. So we'll be obviously continuing to use our outside resources to develop our parent education as well. So ways to get parents, the MDM and all this website information. Obviously email and Blackboard, so our 2 pilot schools, we'll start with them. We're going to be doing some webinars. I'll be honest with you, the webinar for the MDM is we may or may not do only because our webinar would be us playing the videos, because the videos are so good. It would basically be us saying, here's the video, do you have a question about what it said? And then we'd rewind it because there's not a lot we can do on that one because they're really, really good. It's just literally step by step, click here, do this. So our webinars are probably going to focus more on the other pieces, the digital citizenship and things like that, letting you know, hey, you can do the MDM, and here are times you could come into school to be helped to get it if they need that help. Initially, we'll set up an email address that just goes to 2 of our folks in IIS for the pilot group. And the reason we wanted to do a pilot is we have launched things in a big way before where we weren't 100%, where we thought, oh, people won't have a lot of questions. And there were a lot of questions. And suddenly you've got 1,000 parent phone calls flooding into IIS for tech support. So we'll start with 2 and we'll measure. And we'll see. So, we're going to start with 2 on sort of opposite sides of town and sort of say, okay, what does this look like? How many asks do we get? So we know, do we go 2, then 10, then 20? Or we go 2 and then say, okay, we're good. Now we can go 20. So we'll judge the data based on how many emails and calls come in for support on that.
Which schools are those?
I'd rather not announce yet because I haven't actually talked to the 2 principals. So I don't want them to be like, Jeremy, thanks for that non-heads up at the board meeting. So so I'm happy to tell you guys as soon as I broach it with the principals. Yes, okay. So then digital citizenship activities to be sent home. If you could click on that one, Anna, as our second link. These are letters that we have created to give to our teachers that they will be able to send home in English, Spanish, and Korean to give links to the common sense media activities that go along. So there's 1 per each grade level. That teachers can send home to say, hey, if you want to continue the conversation at home, these are the digital citizenship lessons we've been doing in class, so they can continue that conversation with their families at home. We have translated into Korean, Spanish, and English. However, digital common sense media's information is only in Spanish and English, and we have put that in the letter so they're aware that when they go to click there, it's not coming up in Korean. It's not a language they do, as their supplemental parent resources. So if you go ahead and go back to the presentation, Anna, thank you. We'll obviously be sending out our Blackboard and our email with links for parents just to see common sense media in general, because there's a ton of great stuff out there for them. And then DLAC will be presenting on the 22nd of September. We're going to be training our SSAs for those at-school parent events, and then we'll be at Champions for Children and Champions for Learning Conference, and we'll be offering our services to PTA meetings as well. So we want to just sort of get out there as much as we possibly can to get as much information out as possible. And then So we'll start with two. Two principals will receive the MDM slide deck and training materials. I'll be working with them to present it to them, so they know how to present it to their parents. They will send out the emails, the links, and the codes. Principals will offer some kind of parent meeting as needed with our IIS support. We'll back up those first two to see how it goes. And then pilot parents will be able to contact us through that email if they need more support. And we'll sort of see how hard it is for people to get onto the MDM the first time. We've been playing with it in IIS, and I apologize, I sent it to some of the board members who are parents, and I forgot to send them the code. So you now have a code today where you guys can try it out and see. But it's a pretty simple process. It's click on, grab the student device, put in the code, and you're linked. And then you can start, clicking through once it hits 6 p.m. So you won't be frustrated at like 5 o'clock when it's all grayed out. Once 6 p.m. hits, it all lights up, and you can click away and start limiting time, start changing apps and things like that. And then lastly, we'll have a social media campaign starting in October called Know More, Do More. We are trying to really empower parents around their students' digital lives and how the district is addressing digital wellness in general for everyone. FIDA and District Educator Task Force is starting up. So we're working with Darlene. She's given us some names, and we're continuing to sort of gather some folks. And what that's going to work with is that whole group you saw at our last meeting, what we all presented together. That group working with some of our teachers on what should it look like to go a little deeper second semester. How can we modify some of the second step and some of the SEL lessons to make sure they're covering the digital wellness piece? So we have a little broader and a little across the board. It sort of comes down to character development almost, if you look at it. It's like, what are those life skills that kids need that both work within the CASEL standards of the SEL and that also apply to digital citizenship and digital wellness. So we'll be working to sort of integrate those so everybody can see, oh, while I'm doing the second step, it makes sense because it also applies to digital wellness. It applies, negotiation strategies. How is a negotiation strategy the same for when someone's offering me drugs and when someone who says they're my boyfriend is asking me for inappropriate pictures? How is that the same negotiation strategy, and how can that just be integrated into a lesson rather than here's something more, here's a new lesson to teach? No, let's take a lesson that's already there and let's apply the digital world to it in a way that makes a lot of sense to the kids for their protection. And again, we'll be working with OCD as well. They've got great resources, and we'd like to incorporate a lot of that into what we do to make sure we're whole and rounded as we present. So, so that's a first blush at it. Again, the images are all AI made by Wes Creasel. So, and he gave me like 4 new ones just today. Like at 3 o'clock, I'm like, can you give me a couple more? Like 20 minutes later, here you go. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So. Love that there are good and bad to every technology.
Speaking of which, I encourage everybody to zoom in on the people's fingers. AI hasn't figured out how to do fingers, and some of them are very creepy.
Okay.
So weird. I read that online, and I kind of looked through here. There's actually one of them where there's an extra set of hands coming out of nowhere. The family. Yeah, the family where they all have a device in their hand. Yeah, that one. In the center. It's like an extra set of hands on that device. You can't figure out whose hand it is. Anyway, is it? I'm just saying, we don't need to give everything to AI just yet.
Hey.
Jeremy, thank you so much. The presentation, obviously tonight, weird fingers and all, and especially the team's entire presentation at our study session. It was just so great to know that our district is working on this in like a 3-dimensional way for our students. I want to thank Trustee Hanchett for leading us to include this in our board goal. And I want to thank Trustee Berryman in particular during the discussion, helping us sort of guide how we discussed the topic and the sort of direction that we were giving to the superintendent and staff. So I feel very confident that this is, we're taking steps in the right direction. Is there anything that anybody else would like to add, comment, or question about for Jeremy while he's here?
I'm just really grateful too for all the work that's gone into this. I think the parents tell us this is what they really need and want, and we know that kids really need it too. I see parents nodding their heads, and kids need it too, because it's a whole new world that they're navigating sometimes without adult support. And so we want to be there with them to, even as we don't know all the answers, to figure it out together and do our best to keep our kids safe. And so I love that you're empowering parents to do that well. Even as a district, we are being as responsible as we can to ensure that kids are safe under our care and with the devices that we give them. That's an important piece. We're not handing it off to parents, we're enabling and partnering with them. So thank you for doing that. As I look through this list, I was thinking of a couple things that I see missing. I think social media, we want to talk about anxiety and depression and the impact on mental health and also physical health, sleep habits, obesity that we're seeing connected to our kids. I thought about the harms of pornography and how kids are accessing these inappropriate images and creating addiction and depression and anxiety. But I could probably name about 20 more topics. So I think that probably what we need to do is link to these partner resources that we have. And I see that you've done that in some things. And I like the idea of highlighting, maybe each month there's a theme, right? Whether it's online gaming and the importance of talking to your kids about who they're playing with. And then the next week it's talking about grooming and what that looks like at different age levels. But I think that we can highlight topics and then link to the experts, because FSD is never going to be the end-all resource of all of these topics. We need to partner well, and I think Common Sense has been a great partner for us. We have other organizations that we can recommend as well that are experts even in particular topics, whether it's screen time, impact on the brain development for little ones, or exposure to inappropriate content, grooming, whatever it might be. So I'd like to see us have more of that approach.
Sure.
And I think the campaign can fuel that too.
Yes.
Have a topic that we highlight and we link to resources and give people the space to explore. I think with looking at revising the website, we can put some energy there, right? I know it's a work in progress, but I also think it's helpful to have a start here kind of guide for parents. The icons can be helpful, but you don't know what's behind them. So until you open them, it's like opening a door and drawer and seeing what's inside. It'd be great to have a little bit of a map, I think. And especially I found when I was trying to test out the videos, if you're watching the video on your phone and then you're trying to do as it says as you're going through, you're pausing, you're toggling between apps, it'd be great to have maybe a paper with the step-by-steps or something that at least is really easy so you're not always pausing the video going back and forth. I think just simple directions. Say watch the video first, and then to remember steps 2, 3, 4, 5. When you're kind of in that phase of implementing it would be really helpful. I love that we're doing webinars for all of our community, and I think having first language instruction is really important as far as not translation into Korean, but first presentation in Korean or Spanish, so that there's nuances that might be caught in that language rather than directly trying to translate. And the last thing I want to say is I love the campaign, the idea of the No More, Do More. It's similar to the event that we did last year with junior hires, where we had a lot of our kids participate in an anti-human trafficking awareness event that was also called No More, Do More, or Do Better. And I'd love to, that's something that will continue this year on January 31st, and I'd love to see that be incorporated into part of this campaign.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Jeremy? Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Sure.
At this point in the meeting, we're going to declare a public hearing at 7:50 p.m. to allow for public comment regarding the adoption of resolution number 23/24-04 to ensure the availability of textbooks and instructional materials and certification of provision of standards aligned instructional materials for 2023-2024. Anna, are there any public comments on this item?
We do not have any public comments.
All right, great. Do we have a presentation on this item?
Just a small one.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Decor, school board members, Superintendent Dr. Pleka listening, Dr. Hammett, Executive Cabinet, and the families present and listening. My name is Erlinda Soltero Ruiz, and I'm currently interim Chief Academic Officer. And this evening, we are holding a public hearing for the board tonight to solicit recommendations or comments of members of the Fullerton School District community regarding the sufficiency of student textbooks and instructional materials. The sufficiency is defined as each pupil having a standards-aligned textbook or instructional materials or both to use in class and/or to take home if needed. As a note, instructional materials may be in a digital format as long as each pupil has at a minimum can have access to the same materials in class and to be able to take home. So our principals have personally verified that there are sufficient textbooks for all students. So at this time, it is resolved that for the 23-24 school year, the Fullerton School District has provided each pupil with sufficient textbooks and instructional materials.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hammond, do you want to give a little bit of background and what the board would need to do to satisfy the requirements?
Yes, this is an annual requirement that we need to do to let our community have the ability to come forth and talk about our instructional materials and to inform us if there are any insufficiencies. The first step we're doing now, which is the public hearing, and then the next step would be the board would consider and adopt a resolution declaring that we do have sufficient materials for every student in the Fullerton School District.
Is the resolution before us tonight? It is, right?
Yes.
It's 11A?
Yes,
Yes.
it's 11A, correct.
All right, great. Fellow trustees, any questions, comments, considerations before I close this public hearing? Anything that anybody would like to add? All right. Hearing no comments.
We want our students to have what they need to learn, and we're pleased that you were able to contact all of our principals and ensure that our students do have the materials they need. Thank you.
Does this also include My Connect?
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, well, hearing no further comments, and if there are no additional comments, I now declare the public hearing closed at 7:53 p.m. Dr. Coughlin, is there any kind of record on that one may or may not have achieved just now? No? All right. Moving on to discussion item 11A. This is to adopt resolution number 23/24-04 to ensure the availability of textbooks and instructional materials and certification of provision of standards-aligned instructional materials for 2023/2024. We've just received this report. If there's no further discussion, would one of my colleagues kindly make a motion to approve resolution number 23/24-04?
I move to adopt resolution 23-24-04 to ensure the availability of textbooks and instructional materials and the certification of the provision of the standard aligned instructional materials for the 2023-24 school year.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion, questions, or comments on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Dr. Hammett, would you take us to item 11B, please?
Absolutely. Our next item this evening is approving a new committee on assignment recommendation for the 23-24 school year. In our My Connect Academy, one of the challenges we've had at 7th and 8th grade is finding an elective that would meet the needs of both 7th and 8th grade students, that would allow for different ability levels and would also be very high interest. And so, working with our teacher and with her skills and abilities, we have found the ability to offer a digital design course, which is one of our electives, and a second course, which is a computer science course that students are able to work at different ability levels. They're able to get varied levels of instruction, and it's very high interest. And additionally, we're asking the board to take this action, as the teacher doesn't hold the state credential to teach this, but she has the skills and abilities to provide this elective to her students.
How do you know she has the skills and abilities?
We actually worked directly with her to find things that she had taught before, that she had high interest in and had training in, so we know that she had the ability to provide these.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board on this item? If there are none, do I have a motion to approve this item?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Trustee Sugarman. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further comment, question, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, the motion carries 5-0. We're gonna move on to item 11C. Anna, we received a public comment for this item, correct?
Correct. We have one public comment.
Okay, Professor Drover, if you could come to the podium, please. And I would just like to remind the public, we welcome, obviously, information, thoughts, and comments. Public comment was traditionally held at the beginning of the meeting and would be going forward. But thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for taking this in association with this agenda item, and thank you all for your service. We are all aware of the intensity facing our school board and administrators right now, and just appreciative for the work that you're doing, where we're joking about AI hands and not screaming with bullhorns at this meeting. One question that I had as I looked at this revised policy, and greatly appreciate the clarity of the board in really thinking about what the policy is for challenges to instructional materials, is what happens when materials are challenged and the board is, the superintendent or the board is making decisions based upon the stated values of the school district, the educational philosophy of the district, the professional opinions of teachers of the subject, and other competent authorities, reviews of the materials, the teacher's stated objectives in using the materials, community standards, and the objections of the complainant, which is a tremendously broad range of considerations that we're asking our district and board to make in considering these concerns. And I'd like to direct the board and our attention to some of the really wonderful resources that the district has already created and put out that really articulates what those philosophies and values are. This week, for example, a statement came home from my daughter's 5th grade classroom that stated our bullying policy. And in our district bullying policy, we note that we believe that everyone should enjoy school equally by feeling safe, secure, and accepted, regardless of color, race, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, popularity, physical attributes, athletic ability, disability, age, and/or religious preference. And so we have these statements that really articulate what the philosophies of our district are. And yet we have cases where instructional materials are challenged, sometimes by parents who don't ascribe to those particular set of values. My daughter was in a 4th grade classroom last year where a book got pulled out of the classroom library because a parent objected to the way it included LGBTQ characters and content. And so as we think about the ways we respond to those types of challenges, what happens on the day when a parent comes in and says, I don't necessarily want this book in a kid's classroom? Is it pulled off a shelf? Is it something that is addressed sort of one-on-one with that parent? Is it something that immediately escalates to the principal? How do we detail what those values are so that it's really clear to everyone involved exactly what we're standing for with these? So thank you for the opportunity to raise that question.
Thank you so much, and I wasn't keeping exact time. I should have read an entire statement. Thank you for keeping it to just about 3 minutes. Dr. Hammett, can you help us begin our discussion of this item?
Yes, we originally brought this board policy to the board for first read at our July 25th board meeting. At that time, there were some comments provided by board members regarding some changes and edits that would be made to this board policy. Since that time, we have directly referred in the board policy to the administrative regulation. The administrative regulation lays out step by step the process that would be followed if an instructional material is being contested or being argued to not be acceptable to be in a classroom, and then it provides ultimately a process that would be gone through, and then that if the person who is contesting or not happy with the instructional material does not agree with the decision that's made through the process, that ultimately could be brought to the Board of Education for the board's final decision.
Just to clarify on that point, so assuming that there's no immediate deadline, for example, a community event coming up or something like that, if there was a book being challenged that's in one of our libraries, it would go school site, would have the first say, then the person objecting would then have the opportunity to go to the superintendent?
It actually starts with the classroom teacher, and from the classroom teacher it goes to the site principal. Then from the site principal, it would go to the superintendent, and the superintendent at that time has the ability to make a decision, render a decision, or to refer the item over to a committee. And then if the complainant is not pleased with the outcome of the superintendent or the committee, it would be brought to the school board. If a committee was not used when and the superintendent made the decision, then the board could also direct the superintendent to go back and hold a committee before a final decision is rendered.
Thank you for clarifying that. Are there any other questions or comments from our board on this item?
Yeah, I think that I really appreciate some of that clarity that we've come to in this discussion. I still am not totally sure when a committee is called versus superintendent makes the decision, and that might be too complex to put in the policy.
Is that in the regulation?
I pulled the sample regulation that relates to this, and it says specifically to that, upon filing a complaint, the superintendent or designee shall determine whether a review committee should be convened to review the complaint. If the superintendent or designee determines that a review committee is not necessary, he or she shall issue a decision regarding the complaint.
Right.
So it's sort of up to the discretion of the superintendent to decide this is bigger, we need multiple voices to weigh in, versus I can make this decision and take ownership over that process.
I believe that timeliness also applies to this.
Yeah.
Some things you just can't wait for an entire committee to be selected and discussed and meet once or twice and then come back. You need to take immediate action because it's a serious matter that needs immediate action. And so I like the flexibility of the regulation.
In that regulation, does it state that it could be determined on a time factor of how quick a decision needs to be?
It's not articulated.
Leaving it up to the superintendent's authority
Yeah.
and his discretion or their discretion on if it should go to a committee or if it should be done from them. But the person that is complaining will always have the option of taking it to the next step until they've got to the board. The board could either refer it back to committee, right? Or the board could render a decision.
Right.
That's correct,
So
yes.
refer it back to a committee if one wasn't already used.
Correct. Right.
Or make a decision.
I like, as I've said many times, I like broad policies because they give options. And as soon as we get too narrow in our policies, then we get sometimes bitten. And I like the regulation because it gives flexibility in decision-making and still allows the parent to have the input that parent needs. And needless to say, this district feels strongly in parent voice.
I've got another question. So say for instance, you have a parent who complains about a book. The book is
Whatever.
I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, yeah. So you could have a parent who doesn't like a book, or you could have a parent who feels differently and thinks the book is okay. But if the parent that comes to the superintendent or goes through the process, if the superintendent agrees with that parent or the committee agrees with that parent and pulls that book out, then you still could have a group of people who thought the book was okay. I mean, you're always going to have that, right? So, have we ever had that where then that group of people
Complains to get it back.
That person says, "Wait, I want that book back." I mean, is there that?
Fortunately, we haven't faced that experience, and unfortunately, when it does get to that level of decision, there's folks who are always in support and those who aren't. So it's and it's really looking again at what's age appropriate for the age level of students and what's really appropriate for the educational goals and aims.
And
And
you
the
would
ed
hope.
code.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have to follow law, which is
Right.
Yes.
absolutely inclusive and encourages us to represent all types of people. So there's laws we have to follow, and then there's a philosophy of our district, which is, again, Dr. Dover pointed out, like, we want to be inclusive, make everyone feel safe, and so it'd be really a question of value of, does the material make certain groups feel discriminated, unsafe, or left out, or does it encourage that inclusive approach, right?
Dr. Hammond, are there any guidelines for who the complainant can be? For
Yes.
example, can it be, could you talk about that a little bit? For example, somebody can't just walk in, pick a book off of our library
Yes,
Doesn't
so
live in
they,
Fullerton, doesn't have children here.
right, they have to be a staff member, a district resident, or a parent/guardian of a student enrolled in the district.
So it could be a district resident.
It
Could
could-
be
it
someone living down the street.
It could be a district resident, correct, but they do have to be in the attendance area of the Fullerton School District.
And in that case, would they go to a school site for their complaint, or would they just come straight to the district? Probably straight to the district, right?
I would hope they go to the school site.
They would have to go to the school site
Yeah,
per the
the
language,
principal.
I think.
And
Yeah.
Their particular boundaries school, or to show up somewhere.
Or where they had a concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Hammond, could you also talk about maybe how this is different than what we would have had in place before?
This, really, the only change to this policy is that the superintendent doesn't have sole discretion, and that's what the main change to the board policy was. So now there's this extra step, these extra complaint processes in place that allow for the superintendent of the decision, or the decision of the superintendent to be considered by a committee if one wasn't used, and then for this ultimately to come to the school board.
And, I'm sorry, for this person, for whoever it is that is complaining and feels like they did not get, they weren't happy with the results, do they have a form they fill out that comes to the board, or how does that happen?
Yes, as part of this, there is a form that was developed by CSBA that is very specific, that they are able to outline their complaint, what the specific item is, what their specific concerns are, and they also have to verify that as well they are a resident, an employee, or a parent or guardian within the school district.
And that would go through your office or the superintendent's office?
That complaint form will be available here at the district office, and we'll make it available online, and then it would be given to the community member at the school site where they originally filed their complaint.
Right, but then when so then it would go to Anna, or it would go to superintendent's office, or to you, who then pulls together the board to say we have this hearing for this?
That would be handled through the superintendent, yes, through Anna.
So if somebody random comes to us, we could say there is a process for this, and this is where you go.
Please, yes, please go to your school
We
site.
don't do that, even though it says the board, not a board member.
Right, and the board is the final step in the process. They really do need to start at their school site where the concern has generated.
How many of these do we have?
Good
Usually
question.
a year.
In 8 years, I haven't had one.
I
We had one last year, but it wasn't handled through this process necessarily.
Well, I think we have complaints. They just maybe aren't escalated in this formal system or haven't been. And so I think it would be helpful for us as a district, not part of the policy, but to keep track of that, to know what sort of complaints we're receiving, are we removing items, instructional items, and just to track that information to have an understanding.
Well, once this process comes in, then you're gonna have a paper trail, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna have a paper
we
trail on
should.
that.
Yes, we will.
But we'll only have a paper trail at a district level. We won't know,
At the school sites?
how
That's a-
many of these are
can we
happening
collect
at the
that?
school site. I
We
mean,
can ask our school sites to track this. And generally, our school sites are very good at resolving issues at the school site level. But
So
we
they
can-
wouldn't necessarily have that complaint form because it only gets escalated when it goes to the superintendent, that they would fill out the complaint form, right? If they worked it out with the principal.
And generally, most of the time, if a parent or guardian has a concern, they generally go to the teacher.
Uh-huh.
There's a conversation, and they're
Yeah.
able to resolve the issue there, really not even rising to the level of a complaint form.
Sure. I just wonder if it would be of interest to know, if teachers are receiving a lot of take that out, move this, I don't like this. I think it's helpful for us as a district to know if our teachers are making accommodations based on, even if they think they're working it out, for us to be aware of that as a district.
We could definitely ask our school site
Where the
teachers
concerns
to
are?
share that with principals, and then if there is. Right.
You feel like it's a lot more for teachers to do?
I don't think it happens very often, like Chad said. But when it does, there's one piece in this policy I like, that it defines who is eligible to A, make the complaint, and B, sort of to present to us. And we can go broader if we want, okay? But we can also limit it to the community of our city, because sometimes a whole group comes in and we listen, and they have a lot to say, and it turns out like no one is from Fullerton, and it's okay, but this way we really want to reflect our decisions on our community. And so I like that piece is in this policy.
Yeah. The piece about the board being able to send it back to a committee, I didn't see that in this policy. Is that in the admin regulations? It says that there's a committee can be formed by the superintendent if he or she determines that a review committee is necessary. I didn't see an option for the board to request that.
Yes, I sent the board a copy of the revised AR. And it says in step 5.
Okay, thank you.
In step 5, number 3, if no committee was formed as part of the decision, the board may direct the superintendent to convene a committee and return the complaint process back to step 4.
Okay. Okay, so it's in the administrative regulations.
Yes.
Great.
If we found this to be insufficient 6 months from now, we could bring it back and edit it and make it more to our liking or more to the situations that we're seeing, right?
Absolutely. At any time that the board wants to bring back a policy and make edits and changes, that
A month.
absolutely can be done.
It's our policy.
I think we have to wait a month or something.
It's our policy. Our
I
policy.
think Trustee Sugarman is saying we'd have to wait 30 days.
I think
after
We can do
today.
that.
All right, well, good.
Can I-
Any other questions, comments?
Hopefully
Yeah.
within the next 30 days we don't get a complaint. But I also like keeping it broad in the sense of by the time a complaint goes from a teacher to a principal, I'm sure typically our superintendent gets notified of something, and I think by that time I think he'll have a better understanding if a committee needs to be formed or not, or if it's something that he can make a decision on. And I think that's why he's there. So I also like to keep the board policy kind of broad in that sense as well too, to give them that flexibility.
Trustee Yanchip, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I found, I mean, our policies I know are meant to be broad and give direction, but I also think there's an element of creating transparency with the community, right, of what to expect. And I thought that this piece from the admin and regulations was really helpful that says, during the investigation of a complaint, the challenge material may remain in use until a final decision has been reached. However, upon request, the parent guardian who has filed the complaint, their child may be excused from using that challenge material until a resolution is reached. And the teacher will assign an alternative appropriate text for them of equal merit. I think it's helpful for our community to know if they're making a request or a complaint, they can remove their child from that. Whatever they have concerns, they can ask that their child not be engaged in that material, but it doesn't mean they, at that moment, can stop all children from engaging in that material, right? It then has to go to resolution and be escalated to a point where a decision is made. So I personally think that's helpful in understanding the process, both the rights of the parents in that situation, as well as the role the teacher plays and not having to pull something just because a parent complained, right? That there is a process that we need to wait for it to appropriately play out. So I would like to see that added to our policy because I think it brings clarity to our community, which don't have access to our admin regulations.
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah.
Just the first
Yeah,
part.
and it's specifically from the admin regulations. During the investigation of the complaint, the challenge materials may remain in use until a final decision has been reached. However, upon request of the parent guardian who has filed the complaint, their child may be excused from using challenge materials until a resolution has been reached. The teacher shall assign the student an alternative material of equal merit.
It says it may, so that doesn't say it will. So that, I think I don't want a board policy that says it will, just in case, because if in fact it's something that comes in that definitely needs to be taken out, maybe it was accidentally put in there and it's not age appropriate, then they can pull it out.
The
So
teacher?
Right, so it's saying they may, it's a may word, right?
Which may and which shall?
The first sentence.
The teacher, during the investigation of the complaint, the challenge material may remain in use.
Right, and that
True.
gives us the
If a teacher says, oh my gosh, how did this get here? It's not supposed to. Yes, they
That's
could
what I
make
want.
that judgment call. But if it's something that the teacher has continually used for years, a parent complains, they don't have to stop immediately. They wait for the process to be followed.
Is there a second to that change, Trustee Berryman?
If you put that in and send it back out and let us read it again, I think that's reasonable.
Any
So-
other edits to the actual language? Because tonight is the second read.
Yeah.
We can go
correct?
back for a
That's
third
correct.
read.
Tonight is the second
You can
read.
go back for a third
But we
read.
can bring it back to the next meeting as a second read.
Read
Right,
it.
right. So any other edits to the language?
And may I ask, just for a
Yes.
clarification, Trustee Hanchett?
Yes.
Would you see that falling after the paragraph that says the district shall accept complaints concerning instructional materials only from staff, district residents, or parents and guardians of children enrolled in the school district? Put it there and then have the WIN deliberating?
Sure, I think that's great. I actually played around with it today, where to go, where to put it. I think it could also go after the part about complaints are encouraged to be accepted from the superintendent's office, but that people can make the final appeal to the board.
Okay. Do you have a preference one way or another, or any board preference?
I like it at the top, after the district shall accept
Okay,
complaints.
okay, yeah.
Thank you.
My last question was, do we want something more around the philosophy of our community at the beginning of this? I mean, I played around with a lot of language too. I think, Dr. Dover talked about our already accepted anti-bullying policy about Fullerton School District believes that everyone should enjoy school equally by feeling safe, secure, and accepted. We follow California law. Like, do we want to start with some statement about our philosophy as a district?
Personally, I think if you start with one policy, putting that in, you're gonna have to go back to all of our policies, because, truly, we want all of our policies to say this is our philosophy. But I think in our board goals, we said our philosophy.
Okay.
So our board goals say this is what we believe in. So I would refer back to my board goals on that. I would keep my policy as lean as I can, understanding that's what we think, and then leave it like this. But some of the things I think are great to add in. That would be my opinion.
I am in favor of well-constructed language that is sort of plain on its face. And so in this one, I would agree with Trustee Berryman that we have a preamble in our board goals.
We do.
We can refer back to that.
Yeah.
Any other changes, edits proposed on this second reading so that we can bring it back for a third?
Third reading, love it.
All right, Dr. Hammett, you have the direction necessary?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Outstanding.
Our next item this evening is a discussion item, no action required, but we have provided the board with some proposed duties for a public information officer job description if we were to create such a job description and have such a position. So this is just for the board's input and feedback on what you think of these items we proposed and what you could foresee as potentially some other items that may need to be added.
I just want to say that it has been such a honor and a pleasure to witness a very consequential couple of years. I just think that we're looking forward as a district, and I think that we are really taking the entire child into consideration, and I feel like we're taking the lead on a lot of issues. So I really want to thank all of our administrators for hearing the board and really putting into action the things that we've requested. So, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pletka.
He's like, Bob.
He's sleeping.
Maybe.
I was wondering if we might hear him snoring by accident, like his finger hits the mic and then he's unmuted.
In reading this, I know that one thing that I could have just read over it, so tell me if it's in here and I missed it. Part of the conversation on bringing in a PIO was when we have emergency responses.
Yeah.
And we need to be on it fast, and we need to communicate fast. I didn't see emergency responses in here anywhere. Was I over? Okay.
No, it's not there, and we will add that emergency responses and speed of communication
Right.
and
I
emergency
mean, that's
responses.
part of
Yeah,
why
crisis response.
Right, crisis response is part of why we wanted this, is so that
Natural disasters and otherwise, right? Yeah.
By the
Absolutely.
way, Dr. Pletka just sent me a text. He says you're welcome. And the little
And he
emoji,
is
he
still
was
awake?
not green, so that's good.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I think that was the impetus of kind of the moment that said, hey, we need one of these, right? It had been growing, but it was in a crisis situation that we realized how critical that role could be. So I'd like to see that beefed up. And I think, I would see that as number one kind of major reason for having such a role. I also think, marketing is mentioned here, the ability to manage our outreach to the community. But the piece that I think is missing that could be a great asset is an advocacy opportunity. And that building relationships with legislative leaders, elected leaders, government officials that we interact with regularly to create opportunities for partnership, which is not to replace the role of, our leaders in our district, but to maintain relationships, create connections, networks, to build those opportunities and manage relationships, I think is a really important role that this person could play. I looked at Irvine Unified School Districts. They have a PIO job description available online. You can check it out. But their primary responsibilities: managing public information strategies, development and maintenance of community partnership, and legislative advocacy activities. And I think those three of crisis, advocacy, and marketing are kind of the three main buckets that we would want this person to focus on.
So Irvine is also looking for someone for this position?
Oh, I don't know. They're going to
They
have to
had
choose.
one.
Fullerton's a better choice, I'm sure. But
interview them.
no,
Just
but
saying.
their jobs are all available online at all times.
Yes.
That would be a K-12 district, though.
Yes, yes.
I would agree. I think that, hearing that others have it as well. Obviously, more advocacy is better. Right?
Yeah.
It's more collaboration. It's more partnering with people. It's more going out there and doing that. So I would agree.
And I think, we have opportunities sometimes for legislative visits in Sacramento and even DC that organizations arrange for us, but also locally, connecting with our NGO and civil society leaders in our community, connecting with our local leaders, making sure that we are building those partnerships. I know we already do that, but I think that this person could help facilitate that more.
That would be a very natural progression.
Absolutely.
For this position.
Our fourth from the last is attends variety of meetings and conferences for the purpose of obtaining and disseminating information. To me, that sort of fit in with our elected officials, our PTAs, anyone else. But one of the ones I really liked, it says directs the work of others as required. And I know that when we have crisis things and the press phones the five of us individually, it is nice to have a professional say, first of all, only the president of the board is to respond. Second of all, here are the talking points that we are discussing.
United.
And making us look more intelligent, coordinated,
United,
whatever.
perhaps.
Yes, and so I really think that if you look at this as a broad document, the things we're talking about, like connecting with elected officials that are in government and helping us to have the right talking points and things like that, are all here. They're just broad. Again, going back to broad. And if we find that as history continues, that we need more things, it says perform related duties as assigned. We can add more, but I hate to add and limit in some way, because whoever we put down as like elected officials, does that count PTA council president? Is that champions of learning president? I mean, we want it broad enough that whomever that person should contact at a given time falls here.
Dr. Hammett, do you feel like you have enough direction from the board tonight after this discussion?
Yes, I do. And we will make some modifications, and we'll get the board another list of what these new duties look like with these additions and modifications.
So we'll have a draft 2.
Yes, draft 2, yes. And we'll probably send that out through Communique so you can all see it, and then we can go from there.
Great. Any other additions on this topic before we move on?
I just noticed for some reason it only mentions print and digital media, and I would think television and radio should be included. Super small, but all media.
There you go, all media,
All
all
media.
appropriate media.
Why not?
Yeah.
So that
Digital's
we
included,
don't
yeah.
have to be
Yeah.
specific.
All the way.
Because we don't know what comes, we don't know what's going to
The
be
new
here in 2
media.
years.
Yes, true.
It's weird. 11E, Dr. Hammett, take us away. All right, is that Dr. Coughlin?
That would be Dr. Copeland.
It's money, so.
Are we given hot chocolate and all for this meeting? Oh, my goodness.
Okay, this next item is approving the appropriations limitation. It's just the GAN limit. It's an annual item that we bring in front of the board in September. And GAN limit's been around since 1979. It basically keeps inflation adjusted per person government spending under whatever the level of spending was at 78, 79. The amount of money that is being spent on education is below that level. And so the amount that we receive is just a calculation that we show that we are under the GAN limit. It's not a good thing to be under the GAN limit because that means spending for education is lower.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Coughlin on this item?
Do we have to vote on this item?
Yeah, it looks like we have to adopt a resolution.
I believe so. There's a resolution, yes.
I move we adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Trustee Sugarman. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any other discussion on this item?
I think we're just gonna have to trust you.
Seeing no
It's just
further
a lot of numbers.
And it's double checked by OCDE as well. And then, yeah, so we have lots of
We have
folks
lots of checks and balances.
checking.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion carries, Dr. Coughlin, 5-0.
You did a good job, quick.
Quick.
Moving on then to item F.
And this is the presentation for the unaudited actuals of where we ended up for last year for 22-23. And you all have this presentation in front of you. So we'll move through this. And so there's a format that we follow using the state software where we have to report out statement of revenues, expenditures, and the changes in the fund balance from what we estimated last June to where we ended up. So this is the post-game wrap-up of where we ended up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our estimated actuals, where we thought we were going to end up and where we actually ended up. And then the second part of this, we will look at how did our spending last year compare to the year before. So for the revenue, some changes here. For LCFF, we report these in millions, so when you see a .08, that's a decrease of, what's that? I wish it was it's $80,000. So if you see 8 cents, 8 cents is really $80,000. 136.58 is 136,580,000. So we round up. So not uncommon to see some slight changes there. Other state revenue, we did have some increase to our lottery funds of about $396,000 than we estimated. Some of our local revenue went up as far as interest and some other revenue that is offset by expenditures. And so overall, our revenue came in $1,060,000 higher than expected. And for the expenditures, not uncommon to see some go down in some areas. Our certificated salaries went down about $340,000. This is from unfilled positions. Classified salaries came in about $670,000 less. Employee benefits about $730,000 less. Books
And
and
that's because we had fewer employees.
unfilled positions,
Yeah.
correct. Books and supplies a little bit higher. Services operating, these are our utilities and consultants, and that came in a little bit lower. So overall expenditures were down about $840,000. So one of the reasons they also came in a little bit lower, we were able to charge some of our expenditures that were unrestricted. We were able to charge them to some restricted funds, which then increased or decreased the expenditures for unrestricted. So on this page right here, it shows that some of the funds, classified salaries and some employee benefits, we were able to charge to restricted funds. Also some services operating expenditures as well. So overall, we were projecting the unrestricted ending balance to be $22.68 million. It came in at $24.58 million. That's an increase of $1.9 million. Of these funds, some of the funds of that ending fund balance are assigned, and these are the assigned values for RTI LCFF supplemental, $2.3 million. Some site carryover, any money that the sites carry over, we don't take that from them. They'll get that back. For the LCFF base, $528,000. Educational services had a carryover, $182,000. PBIS, small carryover there. And we have set aside for textbook adoptions and deferred maintenance, $750,000 and $1.25 million, respectively, for a total of $5 million.
Is that 1.250 million for deferred maintenance, is that assigned to something in the future?
So it's the assigned, it's kind of it's another little savings account just in case we have those unexpected things that happen. And so we set it aside. We do budget about $3 million on facility maintenance projects throughout the year already. So this would be above and beyond.
Thank you.
This next one, you remember a little over a year ago, the board committed some of its ending balance to some facility and maintenance projects and unexpected enrollment decline. We had $7.5 million. At the beginning of the year, we actually increased that to $14.5 million. And so what happened is the facility and maintenance came down to 9, unexpected enrollment decline 2.5. So there still is $11.5 million in committed funds that are set aside for these expenditures.
Can you explain?
So it's a carryover.
That is a carryover. That's part of the over $20 million of the ending balance. So we have the assigned balance, we have the committed funds.
Thank you.
I was confused because by the term unexpected enrollment decline. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because we know enrollment is declining, so I was thrown off by that.
Right. So we know that enrollment is, we are in declining enrollment, but one of the things that we had during COVID was we had some unexpected decline, more than what we anticipated. And so this is money set aside in case an event like that happens in the future, where we don't have to, we could use these funds to backfill the loss of revenue, and there would not be major disruptions to programs immediately.
Okay.
It would give some
so
time.
It's more of a nest egg in case suddenly we lose a lot of students.
Correct.
And we're not getting that average daily attendance funding that we expected
Correct.
that year. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this also, Dr. Copeland, a category of savings that districts are now allowed to do, where we don't have to spend this money, we're not penalized for it?
Correct. It's beyond the 10% of your ending balance cannot exceed 10%, and that's made up of your reserve for economic uncertainties, your assigned balance, and your undesignated. This would be outside of that 10%.
Oh, so this is not considered economic reserve for economic uncertainty. It's additional.
Correct.
Great.
So one of the things to look at would be how did our spending last year compare to the year before? And we know that on the revenue, our revenue on unrestricted LCFF was higher last year, about $14.83 million. This was the result of a 13.26% COLA and augmentation, an increase in supplemental concentration fund funding of $3.6 million, increase in TK funding. That also takes into account the $4 million that we did not receive for the declining enrollment from COVID. Technically, it really should have, with a full 13.26% COLA, should have been about $18 million, but we received $14 million. We had an increase in home to school transportation for other state. You see that last year our funding was higher there for other state funding. Interest revenue for local also was higher. We were receiving higher interest on our money. So overall, last year's revenue was $17 million higher than the previous year. When you go to the next page, and now you look at the expenditures, after we had adjusted some expenditures over to some restricted funds, our expenditures went up $16.98 million, almost in line with the revenue. And you can see that certificated salaries, classified salaries, and benefits went up over $10 million. This is the result of the 5.5% ongoing increase to salaries and benefits and the 1.5 one-time increase to salaries and benefits. And we also had some returning expenditures that previously were in charge to COVID funds and last year now came back into the general fund unrestricted. When we ended the year last year, we had some deficit spending last year. We ended the year last year at $26.49 million. This year we're ending with an ending balance of $24.58 million, or a decrease from the previous year of $1.91 million. Always like to give a little history lesson about ending balance and where we've been and where we are. 2015-16, we did have an unrestricted ending balance of $31.51 million, which made up 24% of our ending balance. The way they calculate that is the total combined expenditures. Back then, the total combined expenditures were $128 million. Flash forward to now, our total combined expenditures are $200 million last year. And so if the ending balance is 24.58, your ending balance is 12.26%. It's important to note because this district's always kind of had a history of maintaining a pretty good ending balance. And I put asterisks by there because we had some one-time revenue that's come in with the COVID money, with ELOP, large sums of money that get added into that $200 million. So the way that it's calculated, there needs to be an asterisk over the last 3 years because the total expenditures are much higher due to one-time money that's come in. We also have other accounts besides the general fund, and so I've indicated those on here, what they've gone up or gone down. Nothing too dramatic. And so where do we go from here? This is a report that gets approved tonight, hopefully gets approved. We send it off to the county. The auditors will then, between now and over the next couple months, be auditing last year, and that's why these are called the unaudited actuals. We will then bring back the audit report at the end of this year by January for sure. So again, it's kind of proceed with caution. We have some certainties out there. We know that rising health costs are still out there. We have a straight line enrollment decrease. We have more students that are exiting the 8th grade than are coming in kindergarten. And we just have to plan for that. We have this year and next year where we're receiving less money than we did the previous year. This year we were reduced another $4 million for the loss of ADA over COVID, where we were held harmless, and we have one more year next year. Some uncertainties, whether it's called COVID or the flu or the cold, it is on the rise. And attendance rates, it's affecting our attendance rates, not only of our students, but of our staff. And when students don't come to school, we don't receive the revenue. We want kids, if they're sick, we want them to stay home, but there is an impact on that. October tax collection. The federal government and the state, they postponed tax collection, and our funding for this year is based on the amount of money that came in. Normally we would have known last April. we're not really going to know until October. And so that is an uncertainty for us. Hopefully those numbers come in strong. And there's always the looming, is there a recession in the future for us? Whatever that's caused by, whether that's the commercial real estate market, the residential real estate market, interest rates, that's always out there. So we need to watch for that. So our next step is we submit this to the county. After approval, we are going to continue to monitor our enrollment and our budgets. We will do our independent audit, continue to update the budget, and we'll be back in December to prepare, and well, we'll prepare and then present the first interim report at the board meeting in December. Again, big thanks to all the business division staff. This is a total district effort. Ed Services, Human Resources, IIS, Maria Hill in payroll, Joanne DeClaro in business, and of course Damien, who, when he was a CPA, he had, April 15th happened once a year. He has many April 15ths, and this was another one. His next April 15th comes up here in December. So we want to thank him for all of his work on this for a successful year-end closing. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nice job.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Coughlin, and thank you to the team. Were we also going to be discussing Student Activity Special Revenue Fund, Fund 51 Bond Interest and Redemption Fund? Is all of that?
So we don't go into details. That bond redemption and that's a pass-through fund. And so some of those other ones, I'd be more than happy to go through those.
No, just for the purpose of the action that the board would need to take tonight.
It's all part of the total report that you received that looked like a bunch of tax forms. It's all in there. And so this is just a summary, but the detail is in the documents that you received over the weekend.
All right, so for board action tonight, though, it's the approval of the unaudited actuals.
Correct.
And the incorporated documents.
And the incorporated documents, the way it's written in the board docs.
Okay.
I mean, we could read it. It's kind of a long title.
Any other questions for Dr. Coughlin while he's here?
No questions, but I thank you for all the time and effort you guys put into this. We know it is your April 15th every couple months, so thank you.
Your crystal ball, do you think we're going to keep declining enrollment?
So based on kind of the trends, what I have noticed is when students, a class that starts first grade class of, let's say there's 1,300 students, that kind of just follows every year. We don't lose them. It has to do with the students that are coming in. We had more 8th graders leave last year than we had kinder students coming in. So the variable, the wild card, is what's going to happen with kinder enrollment in the future. So, kind of the way that we do our enrollment projections is we do work with demographers, but we kind of estimate that it's going to be about the same. That's going to be flat. We know we're not going to get a lot of new students in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, but they're just going to kind of promote up from the previous grade. So based on that, we're looking at probably a loss of about 150, 200 students a year. Wow. That's the differential between the exiting class. Eventually it will level out. But for the near future, there's about a loss of about 150, 200 a year that we've planned for.
Wow. Do we look at birth rate at the local hospitals?
We do work with our demographers on that, and we do incorporate that. But again,
still dwindling.
It's still kind of, yeah. We need to be very conservative, and it's a little disruptive at the beginning of the school year. It's kind of like going for a haircut. You don't want to cut too much hair off because you can't glue it back on. It's just, it's kind of the reverse analogy there. What's he talking about, haircuts? But want to be careful, because once you plan for a certain number of students, if they don't show up, we're committed. So we have to be very cautious.
Thank you.
200 students declining a year for the next 8 years is
Huge.
1,600 students. So
I don't necessarily go out 8 years. I'm just kind of looking at about a 3-year period because things can change in 3 years, especially with birth rates. We are now coming up on the, it's almost been 5 years since COVID. So who knows what's going to happen there.
Another year or two.
So the birth rates will be coming into play. And I think it's important to note that what we're seeing in Fullerton is being seen throughout Orange County, throughout other counties in the state of California. It's just the population it's decreasing of school-age children.
But you did pull some numbers, because I was curious and I asked you, and you looked at different districts around our cities, and it seems like there is a connection for those cities that are growing and have more affordable housing, that are seeing housing growth. They do have more families moving in, right? So there is some, would you say, it looks like there's some relationship in Orange County between those that have growth in their districts also?
Yeah, some of the relationship I saw are in districts with higher UPP, unduplicated counts, students on free and reduced, students with more lower socioeconomic. The higher ones tend to be losing more. The families seem to be moving more from point A to point B.
When I looked at your numbers, I thought that I might have seen a trend that exactly what you said, school districts with more free and reduced lunch were losing more numbers. But school districts in the South County seem to be gaining numbers.
Well, and
Those were the only positive ones
yeah.
that really.
And in the South County, they tend to have lower. Lower. They're not as low socioeconomically in the South County, which your Irvines, your Capos, your Newport.
Yeah, there's communities that are still building housing. So if new families are moving in,
And they have they have land. We don't have a lot of land. We are going up. We do have some apartment things.
Well, and with TK coming, do we see an increase because of TK? More and more kids starting transitional kindergarten?
Well, TK's actually saved us because that's more students that are coming into the system, and it's saved everybody. But that seems to be just kind of tracking along with our kinder students.
Lower numbers.
So we're not seeing additional kinder kids come in after the TK students go into kinder? We're just seeing kind of the same numbers from TK to kinder?
It's pretty predictable. You can the amount of growth that you'll see from TK to kinder, and then that you'll see from kinder to first, because not everybody sends their child to TK or even kinder. And so there are those traditional trends that we see, and I track them for the last few years, and they seem to be following the same trends, and so it's kind of predictable.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Coughlin? Because if not, this next motion is a mouthful. Anybody ready to tackle item F, please?
I move that we accept item F as presented.
Oh, well done.
Well done. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so all those in favor of approving the 2022-2023 unaudited actuals and concurrently approving the 2023-2024 revised budget for Fund 8 Student Activities Special Revenue Fund, Fund 51 Bond Interest and Redemption Fund, and the fund balance changes as the district's 2023-2024 beginning budgeted balances of the legislative body of the Fullerton School District, District 22, Fullerton School District Community Facilities District number 2000-1, Vandale District 40, and Fullerton School District Community Facilities District number 2001-1, Amherst Heights District 48.
What?
Say aye.
Also known as item F.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought we had to read that into the record.
Good job, Ernie.
I don't think so.
I'd like to hear my own voice.
And I do just want to clarify one thing. We do see a small bump at first grade. So our kindergarten numbers, we do see a little bump up when students start first grade. But again, it's not enough to offset the number of eighth graders that are leaving the system.
And many private preschools have kindergarten, so it makes sense that more kids would join us in first also.
Welcome back, Jeremy.
Hello.
Will you take us through item G, please?
Sure. This is, we did the first reading 2 weeks ago. There were comments that were agreed upon by various board members to add. Those were added by Anna, and it's brought back for a second reading.
I have a question. We have one, we have another one in our folder. Is that different from the one that was posted?
No, it should be, no, we haven't made any changes. We just printed it for
Okay, so
you
it's
to
the
have
same.
in hand.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, Jeremy, thank you again for bringing this item up. And again, you know, when I was talking about this being so many consequential changes that are really important, it's just bringing us to where, like, we're finally meeting our students where they are now in terms of the technology. I mean, you know, just taking out pagers, for example, stuff to update. Any other comments from or questions from our board members? Would we be approving this tonight if it was found to be acceptable, Jeremy?
Yes, that's fine, because we brought the comments. If there's more new ones, we can always bring them back again if we needed to.
So, would anybody like to move to approve it?
I still had a few really small things.
Sure.
One is just, I think, a grammatical mistake. It looks like at the beginning of page 2, this is probably lifted from our student agreement, but it says your use of the district's network and technology on the third line. That's, you know, the editor, writer, teacher of me says we don't refer to our audience as your. So, do you see what I mean? Page 2
Should
of the
it say
policy.
student?
Yeah, student or even others, you know, who are using a student's technology, but I would say
don't have that.
students use in the
Where is
district.
that?
If it's on page 2, the first paragraph that isn't struck through, and it's the third line.
Oh, okay, I was looking at the first sentence, okay.
So that's just a simple grammatical correction I would
Yeah,
suggest.
why don't we just take out the word your?
Students.
Just take out your.
Yeah,
Yeah,
out of use of it, right, okay.
yeah, yep. Doesn't matter who's using it,
Good
right?
catch. Nick?
I was also curious at the last paragraph before it then talks about policy disclaimer stuff. It says the superintendent or designee shall provide age-appropriate instruction. Obviously, Dr. Pletka's not doing not doing the teaching, but we've very clearly laid out all the ways that teachers are going to integrate this into the classroom. So I'm wondering if we could make it simpler by saying district employees shall provide, or
You can, again, there's the Children's Internet Protection Act where E-rate flows in, and basically it says superintendent or designee, any staff member, I mean, all the way down to really anybody. I can be a designee, even as low as Rob, he could be a designee of the superintendent if he wanted to go teach digital citizenship. So really, it's anyone in the whole school district can be a designee of the superintendent, and that tends to come from federal language. That's why I know we had that one paragraph that we had discussed where it was like, you'll teach about chat rooms. And you're like, but chat rooms don't exist.
Yeah.
It's okay, because the feds say, put
Got
this in your policy in order to keep getting E-rate funds. So
Okay.
that one's, it's very, again, very broad, but yes, anyone can be the
So is
superintendent's designee.
all of this language, I mean, we added the word and, but does all of this language have to stay the way it is?
Is that the one that has the chat rooms?
It does.
Yeah, you can add to it. Like if you wanted to add more, you just can't get rid of
Okay.
those. So if you want to get,
Specific language.
yeah. And normally we never put lists like this anywhere in a board policy.
Yeah.
We don't want them. But in this case, it's a federal guideline. In order to continue to get E-rate funds, it
Yeah.
says superintendent or designee
Got
will
it.
teach X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
So,
because my concern was
yeah.
why do we respond to cyberbullying but not
Yes.
exploitation, you know,
Yes.
or not
Yeah.
abusive materials or hate speech?
Yes.
But you're saying in order to receive the funding,
Yes.
it has to be this way.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it then.
Yeah.
I would make changes, but
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
About
Yeah.
not adding everything, because
Yeah.
that's also
Yeah.
in the
Absolutely.
other policy or the other.
And if the FCC changes and gives us new
We'll
language
update.
next year, we'd have to come back and
Okay.
update. Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
just gonna take out your.
Sounds good.
Okay, I move that we accept Board Policy 6163.4, Fullerton School District Student Use of Technology.
As amended.
Without
As
the your.
amended.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. This was a consequential meeting. I appreciate everybody's participation. Board member requests for future items. Our next meeting will be on October 17th. We have a study session on October 3rd.
17th.
And October 21st will be the Fullerton Education Foundation Toast to Learning. I know the people are eager to come. It's going to be an exceptionally fun night in a new venue with lots of new ideas. Thank you all.
My birthday is on the 20th. Trustee Sugar, it's
maybe
really nice of you to throw a huge
candle.
party for me on the 21st.
We'll have dancing. Put on your dance shoes.
I'm ready. Thank you, everybody. Tonight's meeting is adjourned at 8:57 p.m. We will see you back on October 17th.